today for VR Download. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney from London in the UploadVR studios as we talk about the next steps in personal computing. We're wearing Quest 3 headsets today. David has a Quest 3S on. With last generation Meta avatars, we're using hand tracking and built-in microphones. We've got tablets in front of us that show us notes and comments so we can interact with our audience when we're live. Thank you to our patrons for supporting the work we do over on UploadVR.com. In case this is your first time, you can become a paying member on UploadVR.com to support our work directly. We thank our patrons by name here on this podcast and listed on our website. That includes XR Developer News, Podum, HoloNet, Justin Corcoran, Richard Meller, Parmesan Qubit, Steve Lucas, David Wyatt, DePonch, and Soul Presence. Sincerely, thank you all for your support. Hello to everyone out there. Please feel free to share where you're watching us from. I saw Shanghai down in the comments. Hello to you. And to our time travelers catching us at different times or speeds, and those of us watching us through a universal translator of some kind into their native language. Last week, David was in New York for a briefing with Samsung, and without even talking about it, we set ourselves up on a couch, positioned exactly like we are here right now in virtual reality. It looks like we've got 15 topics today and a hard stop at about 3 hours or 2.5 hours. So I will be watching our comments for interesting questions and ideas. But the last 7 or so topics on the show completely changed the market for VR technology, and we're going to want to spend some time on them. So my plan here today is to move us through the first subjects pretty quickly so we could spend our time with those last subjects that I'm sure a lot of you are really wanting us to dig into. Please invite new people into this podcast because this is going to be a good starting episode, I think, for a lot of viewers out there. I also was just tested this gesture. So David has now taught me on the Quest system how to properly exit the studio without indicating my emotions.
Pause would be the button I would use, or the word I would use.
Pause the studio. All right. So basically, I have to slap my own face twice. Now, that's the gesture on a Quest 3. There is a button on the Quest 3S that I could touch, and that would pause the studio. And that doesn't send my gestures, doesn't send my microphone. I also can't hear the studio. That's a really easy way for us to pop in and out now that I can use. So I just wanted to mention I might use that today. So viewers who might watch us regularly might see that happen. David, what do we have today?
Yeah, that is the ability to kind of have this pass-through pause on Quest 3 and 3S is a very useful feature that not everyone is aware of. So, last week we did see some people kind of a little bit annoyed by how sometimes we had to move our avatars around while we were handling something in real life. This week we're going to use that to kind of avoid that being a problem. But as Ian has just been saying, yes, last week, a few days before our show, I was in New York for the Galaxy XR launch event. It has really been a hectic last month or maybe 6 weeks or so in the VR AR world. There was MeganeX with its launches, and I was there. Then we kind of come into the Galaxy XR launch event, and Apple has launched its new M5 Vision Pro on this same week. And unfortunately for me, as you will know if you watched last week's episode, as I came back from New York, I quickly found myself feeling ill, and I was kind of very ill, bedbound level ill for days. So I was actually working off my laptop in bed for days. Only just about recovered from that. The worst possible timing. But nothing was going to keep me from still reporting on and discussing and talking with all of you here about this incredible period of news. The idea that some of the mainstream tech media and wider media have that VR and AR is cooling off or dead, as you will know if you watch this show, if you read UploadVR, is nonsense. It is quite the opposite, folks. We have just seen, Meta launch the first kind of mass market HUD glasses. We now see Samsung and Apple launching high-end standalone headsets on the same week, and we're going to bring you our impressions of them near the end of the show. So I was able to try Galaxy XR. Ian has tried it back in December of last year. Ian has the M5 Apple Vision Pro and its dual knit strap. We're going to get into all of that at the end. We have so many topics this week that I'm not even going to read them all out at the start. I'm just going to tell you the sections that we're going to cover. So we're going to have a smart glasses discussion at the start with 5 topics that range from simple displayless smart glasses all the way up to full true AR glasses. We will then talk about 2 niche 4K micro OLED headsets. And that'll be a wider theme of this show, 4K micro OLED and how it's a kind of ideal display system for headsets. We'll then briefly cover this really interesting but very primitive Quest 3 app called Decart XR, which is a primitive attempt at reskinning your real world view using generative AI. Really fascinating early idea there. We'll then quickly discuss 3 co-located multiplayer mixed reality games. Now, this is not the game show. We don't really talk about games here, but we think there is a trend here of co-located mixed reality starting to really hit its stride, and it's such an incredible use case for these VR MR headsets that we want to really talk about it and how the technology is making it practical and possible. Then we'll talk about the M5 Apple Vision Pro launch. We'll tell you about the details. Ian will tell you about his brief time with the M5 Vision Pro so far, and particularly the dual knit band, which Apple has introduced with that headset. It's also compatible with the original Vision Pro, and it has some really interesting ideas like putting tungsten inserts into the back of a soft strap so that you get a counterbalance but can still lean back on a chair or bed or sofa or airplane seat. Really interesting engineering there from Apple. Finally, we will discuss Galaxy XR and the Android XR launch, as well as my first impressions from my 25 minutes with it. We wish we could have had longer. That's the time we were given at the launch event last week.
Yeah, I'm looking at our comments here. A lot of regular viewers. Wonderful to see them out there. I just used the double slap gesture successfully to exit the studio, get back into it. I heard your microphone once when I took I paused it, put the headset on the table, attended the real world, came back and put the headset back on. And the moment I put the headset back on, I heard you for maybe a quarter of a second. And then I recentered myself, and then I unpaused, and I was back in the studio. So that worked. This is an extraordinary show for us. And I'm looking at the commenters who want a Steam frame. I'm also seeing headset historian Devin Bigelow, Callie Shalashaska. We see Raven out there, Hussein, Siegfried, Jorg, Bar, SM. A lot of people discussing the overall issues of field of view of glasses, and even below that, the HUDs that we're going to have in the near term for a single eye, in comparison to what just Samsung and Apple are shipping. So we are going to get to what Samsung and Apple are shipping, what those experiences are. I appreciate it. I think it was Big's comment near the end of this chat as everyone's catching up, basically saying it's becoming a wider medium. And there's a lot to discuss about that idea. I am in a place called the UploadVR Studios. David brought me here, and this is virtual reality. And there is apparently a medium larger than virtual reality, or perhaps parallel to virtual reality, or maybe an entry to virtual reality. I don't know what to call it yet, but that's where we are today, and what we just saw birthed by Samsung, and Apple is doing some amazing things with it too. So let's move through these first subjects as quickly as we can, David. I'll keep an eye on the comments, but I'm going to save those comments on the Samsung and Apple stuff until we get to the end of the show. So if you have a good idea or something interesting to say, we'll sort of keep it in the back of our minds and try to get to it in some way, shape, or form later in the show.
Let's get straight into the news. So on smart glasses, we're going to start with the newest displayless smart glasses that launched yesterday. The pre-orders went up for them at MeganeX, but they're now shipping. This is the Oakley Meta Vanguard. It is $500 for all 4 colors. Whether you like this design or not is going to be very up to each individual. As I always say on this podcast, love to go and read mainstream reviews of headsets and now glasses and see what people are saying. I often, when a product comes out on Amazon or Best Buy, like to go and read those reviews. And it's no different with this. I've seen a lot of the wider sporting world, people who are into cycling and skiing, who Meta sent review units of this. say that they really like this and that maybe they're kind of daily driver glasses. And I saw one really particularly interesting review from like a cycling news website where they were saying that they like this so much that they're going to go and buy their own because they prefer a different color. And, that shows that, yes, sometimes people are influenced by review units. And in this case, I don't think this person was. So the regular Ray-Ban Meta Gen 1 is $300. The Gen 2 is $380. The Oakley Meta Houston start from $400, and this is at $500. Compared to those glasses, the camera is in the center. It's got a wider field of view, 122 degrees versus 100 for the camera. You can trade off some of that for improved stabilization for really fast scenes. It also has IP67 resistance. One of the things I found when I tried to use the Ray-Ban Meta Gen 1 in the cold, in a snowy, cold environment, was that the battery really died very quickly. Meta told us at Connect that this battery in this unit is particularly designed to have a wider range of temperatures that it will work in. And obviously then, yes, this is going to resist rain and snow and things like that better. It also has louder speakers. I was able to try that, and they are definitely louder. They are noticeably louder than all of Meta's other smart glasses. And yeah, so they have some features on them that are going to roll out to the other Gen 2 Meta glasses, like the Oakley Houstons and the new Ray-Bans, including a slow motion, 720p, 120 FPS, a hyperlapse that goes for up to 30 minutes. So if you're doing a long cycle or a drive, 60 FPS capture at 1080p, or you can do 3K at 30 FPS. It's the same thing we've seen from the regular displayless Ray-Ban Meta glasses, just in a kind of very sporty form factor. So I don't think there's much to say here. We just want to note that it shipped, and here is the image of me wearing it at MeganeX.
I got an old image there. I don't know if I got the latest image. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, there. I'm looking at comments from people that are wanting to get to the later one. I just want to bring up the Ben's comment here. The good news is that nothing happened this week, and VR is dead. Call that
yes,
up.
Exactly. VR is absolutely, definitely not dead. But yeah, I think this Vanguard model is going to be quite popular amongst people who already like this form factor of glasses, and especially who are doing things like sports. It does have that Garmin integration we discussed before. So you have a Garmin watch. You can ask it about your workout stats, and even set up an auto capture feature so that you're cycling and you start to go really fast around a corner or something. It takes videos. We don't want to say too much about it. I think we can move on, but I'll be very curious to see how these sell, and that curiosity brings us nicely on to our second topic.
I'm curious who they sell to. I'd like to see demographic breakdowns.
Yeah, I think that would be super curious indeed. Unfortunately, we don't really get those sort of details. We would love to. We would love to tell you about all the exact sales units of everything. There are some analysts that at times will pretend and tell you that they know these things, but a lot of those surveys are very heavily flawed. So let's get on to our second topic about the sales of these Meta EssilorLuxottica smart glasses in general. EssilorLuxottica being the French-Italian eyewear giant that owns Ray-Ban and Oakley and a bunch of other companies, and owns Sunglass Hut and the Ray-Ban stores and LensCrafters. They are by far the biggest eyewear company in the world. As we've discussed before, Meta owns 3% of them now. They took a 3% stake for €3 billion earlier this year. Last year, they signed a 10-year agreement into the 2030s. And as we've said on this show, this could turn out to be the best decision Meta made for its smart glasses division by far. Meta's struggle is always here. How does it compete with the likes of Apple and Google, who are expected to enter the smart glasses market, when those companies can leverage their existing device and services ecosystem that you're already in? Well, Meta's arguing that the world of AI will make traditional app ecosystems less important. That's one thing. But another aspect is that they have partnered with the eyewear company. There are competitors, but they are nothing compared to EssilorLuxottica in terms of scale. And we know this as well because there were multiple reports that Google was trying to quote unquote steal the EssilorLuxottica partnership with Meta, but didn't succeed. And that's why Google is now partnering with Warby Parker and Gentle Monster. And they kind of teased that a bit as well at the Galaxy XR launch event. So the news here is that EssilorLuxottica, this eyewear company, had their Q3 investor call, and they reported their financial statistics. And interestingly, over a third of their revenue growth comes from their smart glasses business. So that's fascinating because for Meta, smart glasses is, and VR and AR and all of the XR for Meta is a small part of its overall business from a revenue perspective, right? It's like 3% on the order of, even smaller, depending on how you count it. For EssilorLuxottica, it's driving growth. And the other thing that's interesting is Meta's smart glasses business as a whole is not profitable, but EssilorLuxottica's is. So right now, this is the company that actually, in the short term, in the current present moment, making the better half of the deal here, right? In terms of they're the ones that are actually getting profitable revenue that is driving their overall growth as a company. Whereas for Meta, this is still very much so a long-term investment. But that's why we wanted to note this story. We don't know the crucial detail of when you buy a pair of these glasses, how much money goes to Meta, how much goes to EssilorLuxottica. That's one thing I would love to know of the, I have many questions I would love to know about this industry. That's in my top 5 for sure. But I think this story more broadly just tells you that, as we've reported many times before, these companies are selling them as fast as they can make them. This is a very popular category. There's a reason that there are all these reports about Apple entering this market as soon as it can, why Google wants to enter. And another kind of interesting tidbit from this investor call was that in the last call, or the one before that, they told investors that they were scaling up production to 10 million annual units by the end of 2026 for all of these smart glasses. They now have told investors in this new call that because of the acceleration they've seen, that they are doing everything they can to bring that forward. So before the end of 2026, they want to hit 10 million annual production units.
You know that meme of the dominoes getting tipped over? I see Siegfried down in the comments going, Meta is doing all of this because Facebook phone failed. I think they pointed at a pretty far back domino in that domino chain to point to where we are today. Yeah, we've got a couple more of these glasses stories, and I see Jorg saying they use their Ray-Bans mostly as a great off-ear Bluetooth audio device, I think is what that's saying. The camera and AI stuff is just a bonus. I think that breaks it down, how these things are getting used broadly. Yeah.
Well, for some people. So for me, I agree, and I'm the same as Jorg, but in these calls, and I listen to them, they're always reiterating that we're seeing Meta AI usage go up and up, and obviously these are vague statements. We don't, what's up, how much has it increased, but again, I love to read the reviews of these things, and I do see the quote unquote normies using this more and more often, and I find myself using it occasionally, but it's in those moments where it is a value add. For me, though, I agree with Jorg. For me, it is mostly the audio aspect at the exact present moment. But I think the thing we really just wanted to kind of touch on in this story was that right now, all the available evidence suggests that right before these glasses launched, there was this big, massive question in the industry. Does anyone want smart glasses at all? Especially, do they want ones without a display? Is there a market for this? And I think the stories that we've repeatedly seen over the past year, we talked about this before, how they tripled in sales between last year and this year. They're selling them as fast as they can make them. They're accelerating the scale up of production. All the signs here point to this, the answer being that right now, and maybe they peter out, right? Maybe it gets to market saturation and they get through everyone who wants them. But right now, it looks like this is a category that consumers definitively want. And that has interesting implications for HUD glasses and AR glasses in the long-term future. Do we want to move on to the next topic here?
Yeah, we've got HUD glasses. I saw some general questions about just the architecture of glasses, right? We have to be clear that these are display free. What we're talking about is sort of what's driving the revenue that David's discussing. But we've got the display glasses that we've got hands in David's hands right now. Those are HUD glasses, and now we're going to talk about another use of HUD glasses that we're going to break down right here. But those don't involve 3D placement of anything right now. We're going to talk about that later.
Yeah, you're absolutely right to point that out, Ian. That's a really good thing to point out. Everything we've just discussed so far is about glasses that do not have a display. There's speakers, microphones, and cameras. The new $800 Meta Ray-Ban display, it has not come out, has come out so recently that it's not a factor in these earnings anyway, but it's also a kind of low volume enthusiast product right now. This is all about these displayless glasses. But let's move on, indeed, as Ian's saying, to talk about HUD glasses like the Meta Ray-Ban display. And HUD glasses are not full augmented reality. They just put a fixed display in either one eye or both eyes that is not in relation to the real world. You're not putting a Pokemon on the ground. You're not even putting a virtual monitor floating in front of you. It is fixed in your view as if it was part of your cornea or something like that. But let's move on to talk about it. As Ian says, a news story this week. Amazon has confirmed that it's building HUD glasses for its delivery drivers, and it has shown the design and some clips of the HUD. So you can go to our article on UploadVR.com right now to see the clip of the HUD. It is a monochrome HUD, so that is not the same word as monocular. We always get into this trouble. Monochrome means one color. It is only showing the color green. In contrast, Meta's HUD glasses are full color. Amazon has, you can kind of actually see the little waveguide display here. This is designed to be cheap and scalable so that they can roll these out to many, many delivery drivers, maybe all of them over time. I say confirmed because the information, a news outlet that we often read, reported last month that Amazon was working on this. And according to the information, Amazon's plan is to start mass production by the middle of next year with 100,000 units. Right now, Amazon is just confirming that it is testing these with hundreds of delivery drivers so far. It has a camera. It has the waveguide, obviously. It has this controller that goes on their vest that is kind of like a button dial that they can use. This is also a battery that is able to be wired to it so they can have it for all day use. And the idea here is that without having to take their phone out of their pocket or even not have access to both hands, they can, inside the van, scan the right package and verify it's the correct package, get a mini map view that guides them to your front door and tells them you where to put it. They're talking about ideas of integrations with people's Ring doorbells and being able to kind of know that you're in the right property. Over time, they want to introduce additional computer vision AI features like being able to tell whether the package is damaged, being able to allow you as the customer to mark out a real world location where you want your package to be put. And then these delivery drivers would be guided to that exact real world position. This kind of VPS concept we often talk about of using the cameras on head mounted systems to position you with a coordinate that is, 100 times more accurate than GPS, a very precise centimeter level coordinate. Lots of ideas here from Amazon. Right now it's in testing. The interesting thing about that information article is that they suggest that the Amazon unit that's building this is also planning to come out with Echo HUD frames later next year. So this is kind of a very trial run, but the Echo HUD frames would be full color. These are designed for affordability and mass scale rather than that.
Yeah, a lot of people are discussing the obvious route toward training robots to do human tasks using the footage that's being captured by these glasses or by any set of glasses anywhere, really. We're going to discuss and cover that trend as much as we can with our limited resources. You can support us at UploadVR.com so we can cover those sorts of issues more than we do, but we keep our focus where we can on hardware and software so that you've got an objective breakdown of how these things function, why they function the way they do, how they function. But I see this discussion in the comments ongoing of just what's the end goal here? What does it feel like to wear these things all day for your job? What are the potential ill effects of sort of that kind of big brother on your shoulder as you do your work? David and I come in here for 3 hours a week, and other than that, we are trying to find the most interesting things to bring you in VR. We've often, like, I go back a long time. You can imagine dog fooding as a thing that Meta employees have had to do with generations of headset, going back to the Oculus Go 3DOF headset. I don't know if we've got Guy Godin out there with Virtual Desktop, right? They'll still defend that Virtual Desktop on Oculus Go as a fantastic experience, except, right, like, it's not the same thing if that's your job and you have to go there. And so we do want to recognize that sort of element of our discussion here. And I'm excited to get to the next subject, because now we're moving out of HUD glasses after we get past this.
Yeah, so there are definitely interesting discussions there about workers' rights and how much a company is able to kind of control and have a first-person view of your perspective and things like that. Very, very interesting questions there. There is a wider trend here. Amazon already does, through mobile devices, kind of carefully control some of its workers and their timing. And, there's all of these reports that come out from respected news outlets about, tracking bathroom breaks and things like this. And so there are very concerning questions there about how this might be misused. Amazon quotes one of the drivers in this test in their press release about this, is saying, that he likes that he can keep his hands up and free and be able to look up. But obviously, this is a company choosing a selective quote from one of hundreds of testers. And, what were the bad quotes? Would they ever tell us about the bad quotes? Obviously not. So there's only a limited degree to which you can kind of trust that. But as Ian says, yes, let's move on. We've talked about displayless glasses. We've talked about HUD glasses that put a fixed display in your view, not in the real world. Let's talk about full augmented reality glasses, a product category that has not really launched in true glasses form factor, at least in the West yet. There's some primitive models in China, but realistically, this is, for all intents and purposes here, folks, a category that is not truly launched yet. We just got the Meta Ray-Ban display with a fixed HUD. Meta has obviously shown off their Orion prototype while admitting that it's completely unshippable and would cost over $10,000 to sell as a product. But there is a company, a major tech company, that has declared that next year it will ship full true augmented reality glasses. And that is Snap, the company behind Snapchat. So around a year ago, it started shipping the Spectacles developer kit, or should I say the latest Spectacles developer kit. There was an old one in 2021, but the latest one, to developers who wanted it, some for free, others for $99 a month. And that is perpetual. It's a minimum 12-month contract, but if you want to keep the glasses as a developer, you must pay the $99. If you stop paying, you must send them back. That's the agreement you make. These are not a product. They're not a consumer product. They are a developer kit. You can see them here. I've tried them out. They are bulky. They are big. They look ridiculous. They strain the definition of true glasses form factor. And whether you want to call this glasses or a headset, that's a big debate, I guess. However, Snap has said, and Snap's CEO has specifically said, that the consumer model coming next year won't even be called Spectacles. It will be called Snap Specs. And Specs will, according to Snap, I should say, have a much sleeker form factor, lighter weight, smaller, but have more capabilities while running all of the same content of Snap OS. So as such, what we as journalists in this field are really tracking right now, in the absence of having any real details about specs, is Snap OS, the operating system that, again, Snap is telling us is going to be running on the specs. It's the same OS from the dev kit to the specs. The hardware will be different. So Snap, since releasing Snap OS for this developer kit, has been repeatedly updating it with new developer features. Myself and Ian have both been reporting on this. We've seen things like GPS introduced, floating keyboards, the ability to detect holding a phone, machine learning APIs to let you use tools like the vision capabilities of Google's Gemini AI, but in a spatial way where you can actually kind of connect objects, connect responses from the AI to a position in the real world. And this is the trend we've seen. And then a few weeks ago, I was able to try Snap OS 2.0, which instead of just adding developer features, has started to add consumer level features like a much better web browser that can be resized, that supports WebXR, some of Snap's kind of TikTok equivalent, a gallery for all your photos, a travel mode so that it will work on a plane or a train or something like that. And they also showed me Synth writers running on the headset, which was interesting because that's a game that you might have played on Quest and Vision Pro ported. But now at Snap Lens Fest, which was last week, they have revealed a bunch of new developer features that are getting them closer and closer to a full launch next year, as well as some of the content that is coming. So I'll run through these quickly, but they have added in-app payments. So you can now actually purchase things on the specs. Developers previously could only make their lenses, as Snap calls them, instead of apps, free. They can now do in-app payments. They still can't charge for them, but this works how you would expect it to work, the same way when you buy stuff on your Quest, right? You set up a payment card in the mobile app. Then when you go in the headset, you have a PIN you can use to pay for things. They also have an interesting concept called permission alerts. So previously, Snap's approach here, when it comes to the whole discussion we always have of do developers get raw access to the cameras, Snap's approach here was that you could either get access to the cameras and microphones raw as a developer, or the internet, but not both. Really interesting approach. So a developer could access your camera, but then they wouldn't be able to offload your images anywhere because the app doesn't have any internet access, right? That's a really interesting approach to this that no one else has taken. But now they've introduced a permission that does let you use both at the same time. And this will actually pop up every time you launch that app. The other thing is, for the duration of the time you're using this app, the white light at the front of Spectacles and then Specs will pulse. So in any app that is capable at all of accessing both the raw camera feed and the internet, this will pulse constantly. Now, let me be clear about the distinction here that's important. Snap already has a lot of high-level APIs for computer vision, for speech recognition, all of these things that run in kind of Snap's sandbox system, so that the developer doesn't get access to the raw camera feed, but it does get, an environment mesh, hand tracking. They can do object tracking, speech recognition. All of these things can be done, translation, etc., without ever getting raw access. This is only for if developers want completely raw access. Another thing they've added is a UI kit that lets developers easily add system-level UI functionality. This system does not have eye tracking, but it does have very good hand tracking that I tried. So it's similar to what you may find on Quest a lot of the time. You're doing a remote interaction by pointing your fingers. Another thing they've added is a mobile kit so that you can connect via Bluetooth a phone app, companion app, and the app running in Spectacles and be able to use them both at once. Now, that's in addition to a feature that Snap Spectacles has that no other headset that I know has, which is developers can easily, without having to build their own app, use your phone as a 6-DoF tracked controller. So the Spectacles app that you use to set up Spectacles, if a developer is using this feature, it will tell you open the phone app. You open the phone app and your phone is instantly just a giant touchscreen 6-DoF tracked surface that they could use for take a shot, walkabout mini golf if they wanted. Now, to be clear, walkabout mini golf is not on this headset at all, and there's no plans. I'm giving you an example of how a developer in theory could use it to build a mini golf experience. Another thing they have here is a feature called EyeConnect. That's EYE, not I. And so one of my favorite things about Spectacles as an OS is that it makes it easier than any other platform I've ever used to do co-located multiplayer, something we'll talk about later. On a system level, I don't have a screenshot for you right now, unfortunately, so you'll just have to go with what I'm saying. On a system level in Spectacles, you open the main menu, like the equivalent of your navigator on Quest or your main menu in Apple Vision Pro. And if someone nearby has a co-located multiplayer session open, you will see a little badge, like a 1. And you click on that, and it shows you the nearby session. You click on it, and you're into it. And then you do a little calibration step. Amazing, frictionless, means you can play games in a shared space in seconds. The feature they've now added at LensFest makes it even easier. So they use tracking of your face and glasses by looking at someone nearby to have co-location start by just looking at someone. So I pick up the glasses, I look at you, we're both wearing glasses, they look at each other, they do a little magic pairing step, and boom, you're in co-located multiplayer. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, I don't think this is good hardware, but I think Snap OS is amazing software.
Yeah.
Good hardware, but Snap OS is amazing software.
Yep, I totally get that, and we need to give credit to them where it's due to that. There's not a lot of people who have worn this on their heads, but there's not a lot of people that have experienced the app of interacting to control the glasses with the app. It's a huge step ahead of what Meta has shipped with Meta AI, which tries to give you the slop feed, and the Horizon app that tries to give you the Horizon feed. And you don't have that experience in this hardware with the platform that Snap OS has built. You just have control, all the features that you want to interact with your glasses. They're front and center. It's a beautiful interface. And we've also had a lot of access from Snap to their leaders to talk to them about their ideas. They've got this co-location worked out where, in theory, these sessions disappear, sort of like the disappearing images of Snapchat. And that's a privacy securing feature. There's a comment out there that I wanted to talk about. They were talking about pass-through permissions and eye tracking permissions and guilting pressuring Apple to give those. And I wanted to describe how the Apple operating system works for anyone who isn't familiar. You can have two objects floating out in front of you in the Apple operating system. This is made by one person. This is made by one person. Do you want these two objects to know where your eyes are pointed at all times? Probably not. You probably only want these objects to know when you actually want to interact with them. You don't want them to know everything else you're looking at. And that's a fundamental architectural difference of what VisionOS is trying to do compared to almost everything else we've seen. And I needed to just explain that.
Yeah, that's a really good point for the shared space, the fundamental architecture of VisionOS, where you can have windows and volumes, a new concept, right? We are all familiar with windows in an operating system. VisionOS has volumes uniquely that are all running alongside each other. Snap OS is actually architected somewhat similar. Now, they can't let you run multiple apps at once, but that's actually not a software limitation. Their architecture does support it. It's just that they have very limited compute on board, and it's not practical from that perspective. But the underlying engineering of Snap OS is actually ready for that when one day they do have hardware good enough for that. I guess the one pushback I would give on your idea is that makes perfect sense in the shared space, but VisionOS also has a full space, what we're all familiar with, right? When on a Quest, on PC VR, you launch an immersive app, a VR game, that's a full space. It takes over everything. It's one app at once. And I think developers are asking, could we not get access to eye tracking in the full space? And so that would allow you, for example, to do eye tracked foveated rendering on PC VR through ALVR or something like that. And I think that's what people want, but it's an interesting problem space.
So catching mechanics that we always talk about, that could be improved by adding the eye tracking as a targeting sort of figure out what someone is looking at a little bit better. Well, we're almost done with the Snap section here, and then we've got the micro section.
Sorry, this is our Snap OS story. We're going to quickly move on from this. Yeah, I understand our time pressure here. I just wanted to say that on your point, that leaves Apple as the only company that doesn't give you raw access to the camera. If Android XR does, Horizon OS does, and Snap does, but again, on all these systems, it pops up and asks you on Apple, other than enterprise, you can, if you have an enterprise license for Vision Pro, you can absolutely do this, but you need a special permission from Apple, and you can't roll it out on the App Store. This is for your internal apps only. Yes, you can. On the App Store for Vision OS and even on Test Flight, 0 apps can access the actual camera other than Apple's own apps, of course.
And this is going to get, I can't derail us, but it uses people, Vision OS has people detection, which I was going to save this for later when we talk about M5 Vision Pro, but all the things that are happening with that vision, with the suite of sensors and the processor, are allowing the system to leave my environment out of recordings. So I can have a mixed reality experience of any kind where I see any amount of the physical world I want or need to see, right? I could see my friends, family all around me. I could see the objects I need to interact with physically to make the game work. And then I see 60% of my field of view is digital content, everything around me. I can choose to leave all the physical environment, my family, all my messy living room out of my recording on Vision OS today, while also having people detection. So, like, I could be playing tennis here, and then a family member comes up to me and they get popped into the experience. I'm in full virtual reality here, and they get popped in. I look over and talk to them. My recording doesn't show them at all. My video recording just shows me looking at virtual reality, and you don't see that in my recording. So now I've got a clean recording that I can share. I'm actually feeling more willing to record in my headset all the time now, knowing that I've been able to leave that feature, leave my physical recording out. And so I had to explain that because it's related to this permission.
Sure. Let's talk about Snap OS content then before we move on from our smart glasses. So I'm explaining how Snap is building out Snap OS, which will power their Snap specs next year, which, unless someone else pops out of nowhere, should be the first consumer AR glasses, true AR glasses, from a major Western tech company. They've also been building out content. So they are bringing improved first-party apps, as I mentioned, like their browser with WebXR support, like their Spotlight TikTok equivalent, a gallery, things like that. In addition to that, they now have a yoga app that they're putting there. And again, everything we're talking about here, just to be crystal clear, these are virtual objects in the real world. On the current dev kit hardware, it's in a limited field of view, right? So if you turn to the side a little bit, these objects are not there anymore. You have to really be looking directly at them to see them. You don't see that in the recordings. That's not represented, but it is true AR. Another thing they have is translation. So this is a feature on the Meta HUD glasses where it's fixed to your HUD. In Snaps, they are positioned under a person's face. These subtitles are literally anchored, positionally anchored to a person's face. They also have announced, content from some big companies. Synth Riders, the rhythm game that you have on Apple Vision Pro and Quest and SteamVR and PlayStation VR, I think. That has a ported version. I played it at Snap London. It was fun to play. It was great to see on transparent AR glasses. The field of view would become a limit, and they've kind of had to design around it to make it a little bit more of a restricted game, but developers are learning to design around that. It would be fun to, quickly play on something like a bus or train or something. If you were bored, just sit here with your fingers and play a little rhythm game as the items come towards you. They've also announced some content from, bigger companies. So Paramount's Avatar: The Last Airbender. There's a Snap OS game available right now, and it'll be available at launch on the Snap specs that you can see here. They have a Star Wars game as well, Star Wars Holocron Histories from ILM Immersive, the same studio that built, Vader Immortal and Tales from the Galaxy's Edge and the new Beyond Victory mixed reality game on Quest. That same studio has built a Star Wars game. We don't really have any good footage of it. You can see a really short, blurry clip of it in our article. They haven't really shown anything more than that yet. We hope to next year, obviously, when the specs actually ship as a real product, tell you about that. But I think the thing I want you to take away from our Snap discussion, just as we move on here, is that this is definitely a dark horse here. We often talk about Apple and Google and Meta shipping AR glasses in the next few years, potentially, or by the end of the decade. But Snap has also been working on this for many years and invested billions of dollars. It's not on the same scale as those companies, but as we often do discuss, it's not just about the scale of investment, it's about the efficiency of investment. It's too early to say whether Snap is going to be a real contender here, but it certainly wants to be.
And they've made a lot of smart decisions along the way, even within the terrible constraints of the hardware, right? It's not fun to do VR on limited field of view. Like there have been limited field of view VR headsets We don't talk about them, right?
The one difference is obviously, in glasses you get a full quote unquote real world field of view. It's not really full because how thick the frames are does block out some of your view, but that's the kind of distinction that does matter there, in that you're still seeing the real world, but in all of these AR glasses that exist in labs other than Meta's Orion, which is unshippable, in all of the first wave of true AR glasses we expect to launch over the next year, we expect the field of view to be very limited. So the easiest way to understand this is that you don't have object permanence. If there's a Pikachu on the ground in front of you, when you're not looking at the ground in front of you, you do not see that Pikachu. You have to look at the object to see it. And that is the
we will
one
break this
big
down.
limitation.
When we talk about Galaxy XR and Vision Pro and on David's experience, David and my experiences these last 2 weeks, we will break this down in depth. You will understand this by the end of the show. I encourage you to get through to invite new users into this space so that we can have that discussion with them. I see we're getting up to over nearly 200 users, people out there watching our show. Thank you for tuning in for this discussion. And we're starting to transition to VR-based devices here. And then we will get to mixed reality games, and then we'll have our big section at the end of this where we're going to really break down where we are with VR technology and object permanence, right? Remember object permanence, because it actually matters really significantly when you're trying to socially connect with other people, right? You're talking about a person being permanent, and then when you look away from them, you don't know where they were because you didn't have a sense of their placement around you. And suddenly they're ghosts in your ear somewhere between a Discord call and actually being present, and it doesn't feel great. But let's move on to this next section.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get straight into it. So if you're just joining us now, we've just finished talking about smart glasses. We're going to talk now about two niche 4K micro OLED headsets, and then we're going to talk about other things later in the show. So let's just get straight into this. Shiftall has announced a MeganeX Mark II, as well as Index-like SteamVR controllers here. So we just want to briefly note this. I have tried this headset briefly. It uses 4K micro OLED panels, and it's a tethered PC VR headset with really quite unique head strap design here. It's very light, like Big Screen Beyond 2, except instead of being a 2.5K micro OLED like Big Screen, it's a 4K micro OLED. It does have a narrower field of view, though. That was my kind of impression of using it. It's only about a 90-degree field of view. This is a really interesting headset. We were just talking about glasses that have, a 40 or 50-degree field of view. This is still a lot wider than those, but this is a full VR headset. It is for plugging into your PC. You need SteamVR tracking base stations. You need to either have index controllers or, as we're talking about here, purchase their somewhat index-like controllers that they're working to bring out next year. But this is a refinement they've made to the Mark I that improves things like the cable connector to make it more robust, improves the startup time for putting on the headset and connecting to SteamVR and it actually being ready to show you things, improves the comfort of the face strap, allows for longer cables. This thing does ship with quite a short cable, 3 meters or so, but they're now supporting up to 10 meters via the new interface. They have a USB port on it now that can support more power, so you can do things like add both headphones, there's no audio built in here, and a face tracker add-on that you might have. The big flaw I see with this product that they still haven't addressed is that there's no eye tracking. And as we'll talk about throughout this show, 4K micro OLED is amazing. It is the ultimate current display type for VR. Having a 4K micro OLED headset will make you never ever want to go back to your 2K LCD ever. It's very, very expensive though. They are the majority of the cost in Apple Vision Pro, Galaxy XR, and this headset, and the one we're about to talk about. But yeah, this is in the age that we're now in with the Galaxy XRs, we'll talk about being around the same price as this thing, yet fully standalone and wireless on a computer. It does become a little bit more challenging to say, what is the product proposition here? Well, some people will say, look, they don't want all the standalone stuff. They only want to be in VR. They don't need pass-through. They like their base station tracking, and they want lossless quality over a DisplayPort cable, not wireless. If you're that person, this is the kind of headset you want, but you have to realize that the field of view is a trade-off there. As for their index-like controllers, it's interesting in that they kind of have a similar look at first glance, but they don't have trackpads. They have grip triggers instead of finger sensing on the handles here. They are kind of like a crossover between index and touch. But as we understand it, and has been reported elsewhere, it seems that the Valve Index controllers are no longer in production. You cannot buy them on Steam today anymore. So all of these headsets like Big Screen Beyond and Shiftall that still use SteamVR Lighthouse tracking, if you don't have controllers already, there's going to be a demand for someone to make controllers. And Shiftall's idea here, as they tell us, is that they want to say, hey, we'll sell you those controllers. But yeah, we'll have to see if those come out in 2026. They did ship Mark 1 of the headset, right? It's been shipping to people. Some people like it. Some people don't like some of the imperfections. A lot of those little imperfections have gone into the Mark 2.
F. Meister is asking a very good question out there that we don't have a solid answer to, but I do have a guess. What is the fail state that causes the low yield? You are packing what is the number of pixels on a dual 4K OLED? Like, how many pixels are there total?
You're talking around on the order of 25 million to somewhere between 20 and 30 million, depending on the exact resolution.
And you will see one or two of them if they die. So that's like, if one or two of those 25 million pixels is like shattered across in the wrong spot of your field of view because it's magnified that wide, that's going to kill you every moment you see it. You're going to hate VR every moment you see that dead pixel. So like, they have to have a quality control ecosystem for pixel perfect accuracy across the entire display. It's extraordinarily hard.
Yeah, these are tiny pixels. I wonder if I have the image here, but iFixit did a teardown of the Apple Vision Pro, and they had an image where they compared the size of the iPhone pixels to the size of let me see if I can find this here, to the size of the Apple Vision Pro's displays pixels, and every pixel in your iPhone looks absolutely enormous in comparison to these micro OLED displays. It is a huge challenge to manufacture these things. We're still in that era, but this is an example of a headset that uses them. And let me see if I can bring up that image, actually, because I think it would be very relevant here. If you want to take some comments while I bring that up.
Yeah, let's see here. I do wonder how noticeable are singular dead pixels with high resolution this high. So one of the things I've noticed out there in the comments is people are going in and trying out the M5 Vision Pro and feeling like they've got fresh eyes. And I've actually used that sentence previously in my reporting, I don't know, more than half a decade ago, because people aren't used to owning VR headsets, so they aren't used to the minor scuffing that happens over extended use of a VR headset. And so, like, you don't realize that the headset after 1 year of use has all these little weird little smudges and things that you've just gotten used to as part of your viewing experience. Then you put on a fresh set of eyes, a whole fresh headset that's never seen a human head before, and oh my God, everything is new again, right? Like, and all that's changed is you've got a fresh lens.
Yeah, so here's that image I was talking about, showing you the size of iPhone subpixels and the size of Vision Pro subpixels under a microscope put together. You can understand that we're talking about, I mean, it's literally not the same manufacturing process. The pixels that you have in OLED on your iPhone or your TV or your tablet, they're OLED on glass. This is OLED on silicon. It's actually a different display technology, kind of. There are similarities. They're both organic light emitting diodes, but how they're manufactured, completely different. And you can see this image is just shows you what we're talking about here. This is a different universe in terms of manufacturing complexity to get this out. But the result, as I'm going to say over and over in this show, is stunning. For me, I'm wearing a Quest 3S right now. I'm using a Quest 3 all the time, all day. When I go, it looks like a screen. It looks like I'm looking through a screen right now in a Quest 3S. There is this little bit of, subpixel shimmering. It's not like the old days of VR where it was a screen door effect, where you literally saw the gaps. But there's something there that becomes so obvious the second you try a 4K micro OLED, where you're like, this doesn't look like I'm looking at a screen anymore. It looks like I'm looking into a virtual world. And when you combine that with the fact that you get OLED signature infinite blacks, or infinite contrast and rich, deep, true blacks, the vibrant colors, it's stunning, right? And that kind of brings us on to our next story very nicely, actually, which is about a colleague of ours, UploadVR's Don Hopper, and the fact that he has one 4K micro OLED headset, the Play for Dream MR. And this is conceptually quite similar hardware to Galaxy XR, right? It's a standalone headset. It uses the XR2 Plus Gen 2. We don't need to talk too much about it because we've talked about it before. But he got this headset, and at first he couldn't actually use it because it didn't fit his head. The rigid design that they have here, in particular for Play for Dream, I'll try to bring up their regular strap. It just doesn't fit right. And because there's no tilt adjustment on the visor, he couldn't get the lenses to properly align to his head. And I had the exact same problem. I've tried Play for Dream. I tried it very briefly. Sometimes I get to try a headset for 5 or 10 minutes. I got to try it very briefly. And I had the same issue. I thought, in theory, this is great. It uses those same 4K micro OLEDs that we just talked about. And they're stunning. But I can't actually get the lenses aligned with my damn eye because of the way this head strap works. Really trying to bring you an image of the headset in general. Long story short here, at first, what Don did was that he modified the headset. He started to, take apart the head strap, and yeah, you have some images here. Combine it with some third-party Quest head straps to get this kind of, Frankenplay or Playenstein, whatever you want to call it. And the idea was here that he loved this experience of 4K micro OLED so much, particularly in virtual desktop with the monster mode that is available on the XR2 Plus Gen 2 headsets, that he couldn't go back to doing PC VR on his other headsets. So he had this headset, right, that didn't fit his head. And he said, I'm going to move mountains to make this work because holy shit, 4K micro OLED, this is what I've been dreaming about for decades of VR. He's a decades-long VR enthusiast, like a lot of us here. This is it. This is the display type that makes you go, God damn it, this is it. This is what's been missing on all of the other headsets. It's a shame that we live in a timeline where these things are so expensive. These 4K micro OLED displays, they are, $500 for a pair or so, plus or minus a few $100s on each side. So you like the cost to a manufacturer to put these in a headset is what you pay for an entire Quest 3 today. That's the crying shame here, but they're amazing. And this will bring us on to, it's part of why Apple Vision Pro is amazing. It's part of why Galaxy XR has this amazing draw that we're going to talk about. Eventually, Play for Dream sent Dawn their forehead pad that is sort of more designed for Western face shapes in their wording. Play for Dream is originally a Chinese company that reincorporated in Singapore. And so he was able to make it work over time without his modding using this open periphery design. We'll talk more about that later. The only reason I wanted to talk about these two headsets is just to say that they have the magic sauce that Galaxy XR and Vision Pro have, and that is 4K micro OLEDs. And once you get them, it's like a junkie needing their next hit of drugs or whatever. You're going to do whatever the hell you need to make sure that your eyes can get those 4K micro.
A new set of eyes, yeah, exactly. Wind out there saying it nearly checked all of my boxes, nearly, yeah. And I'm hearing that sound, that I heard that in the little girl in the Alien voice saying that they come out at night. But yeah, I get that. That's the feeling of everyone out there. It's I need this OLED is what you're all saying in a collective voice. And it's probably not this one, probably, but like. It does have, we got to call out, I think Guy Godin's monster mode is on there, and that is a fundamental piece of why this seemed to be such a stellar experience. Don described it as he couldn't tell the difference from a wired connection anymore, right, was essentially the takeaway.
Yeah, it felt, according to Don, lossless, and we're going to talk about this more with Galaxy XR because we'll talk about Virtual Desktop is also a launch title for Samsung Galaxy XR. The reason I wanted to bring this up was Don's experience does show this. I see a comment here from Sampler saying, I don't know, Play for Dream's lenses weren't that clear. Yeah, look, I'm not saying this is an amazing headset. I'm saying that, like, it's got its pluses. And I agree with you. The lenses aren't, clear and sharp all the way out, but in that central sharp spot, you can see the 4K micro OLED. I'm simply saying this headset has that one thing, the one magic piece. I wasn't amazingly impressed with the rest of it. We'll see what happens if they get to their goal that they say they want to have Android XR on this headset. They want to one day put out a firmware update that replaces their proprietary fork of Android with Google's Android XR. Samsung has the exclusive. We'll see if that happens. The story here is that 4K micro OLED is so good that you'll move mountains to be able to keep it. Are we ready to move on?
More than just keep it, right? Like I'll move mountains to move the OLED display into every room of my house, right? Like I now no longer want my TVs, right? Like that's how extraordinary it is.
Yeah. It's this, you do get this middle point with something like a big screen beyond where it's micro OLED but 2.5K, and it's still great, right? But it's the combination, it's the duo here of 4K in a headset plus the OLED contrast and richness and colors. And one thing that none of these micro OLED headsets that I've tried, none of these 4K micro OLED headsets have the mirror effect of regular OLED on glass. It seems like of all the ones so far, I can't speak for unreleased headsets, but of all the ones so far, they have the display quality is great across these 4K micro OLED headsets. Yeah, let's move on. We have a huge show today. We're going to need to get through these topics. The next topic we're going to talk about here is Decart XR, this really interesting Quest 3 app that you can get for free on SideQuest. Here's the image of it. And so this is an early primitive instantiation of an idea. And that idea is today when you're in a headset and you're getting work done on your virtual monitors, or you're watching a movie on a giant screen, or whatever else you're doing in, say, the system home environment, you pretty much have two options. You have pass-through as your background, right? Your real world, and you have full awareness of your environment, or you have a virtual environment, right? Your virtual home. However you use that on whatever headset, there's a bunch of different versions of what a virtual home is. What if there was a third option? What if you could use generative AI to reskin your real environment so that geometrically it was the same, but visually it looked like your favorite TV show or movie? So your room looks like you're on a ship in Star Wars, or like you're in, a castle in your favorite fantasy series. You're in Minecraft. You're in whatever it happens to be your interest, the kind of home that you would have in a crazy fever dream one day. That's an interesting third option. Now, that the potential to do that does not exist today in a full sense. Not even the server-side models can do this today. But you can do an early kind of glimpse at it. And so that's what Decart is. It takes a 2D rectangular segment of your view, and it sends the pass-through camera imagery for that area to their server-side style transfer model. And then in real time, you get a stream back of what it looks like. It changed to one of dozens of different styles, or you can use the microphone, speech to text, and come up with your own style. You can literally just say what you want, and the model will do a real-time style transfer. Now, I keep saying primitive. Why do I say that? It's 2D, it's not 3D. It has very high latency. You will notice a major delay of a second or more as you move your head around. And it's not in your full field of view. It is this kind of segment in front of you. I need to be so clear about all of these things before the hype runs away. But at the same time, it is a really fascinating early preview of this idea that could be a core use case of XR headsets, right? This ability to reskin your environment however you want it to be while still keeping, geometry. So you still pick up your drink, but instead of it being your can of Coke, it's a, pack a punch from Call of Duty, or, it looks like a flask in like Ridley Scott's Alien, and your whole room looks like, a containment room from Alien or something. There are a million different examples of where this could be. The idea, when this technology eventually is possible, is that, again, you still have situational awareness. I can pick up that flask I just talked about that is really a Coke can that looks like a flask. It's the same shape and size. I can place it on my real coffee table, but now my coffee table is a Minecraft crafting table. You can theoretically do some of these things with just a scene mesh in a manual sense, by the way, some of these things, but to do all of it, to have everything all the time, it seems to imagine pulling that off without a generative AI model. Now, it will probably take years before you can even do a server-side version that is 3D and has stereo consistency, full field of view, low latency. It's possible that on a latency perspective, it's just not going to be possible ever to do both the style transfer model, not ever, ever is a bad word, anytime soon, to do both the style transfer model and the streaming from the cloud. Eventually, we will have devices that are so powerful with so much onboard NPU, local machine learning compute, that it can do this on device. And that's when this gets interesting for me. I think this is one of those things that is going to be an experiment this decade and a deployed idea in the 2030s. But if you have a Quest 3 or 3S, go and get this on SideQuest. It's linked in our article, I'm pretty sure. If it's not, just search Decart XR SideQuest, load it on your Quest 3, give it a try. There are 2 modes on this, by the way. There's another mode that does face swapping, but that's just like a Snapchat filter. Ignore that one. Do the one that shapes your view.
I had to disconnect for a second. Is it contained within this field of view, within a larger field of view?
Area in front of you like this. It's a 2D. It's as if someone is holding up a giant tablet, like an enormous tablet that's bigger than any tablet in the market, right in front of you, and keeping it like perfectly fixed to your head.
Is that for comfort reasons?
No, it's because the more field of view you're showing, the more pixels, the more this model has to work. Right now, I think I really want people to try this because it's not great, right? It's really, really early. It's such a primitive idea, but I think, there's also like a awareness perspective. If you're walking around in the real world and you had a 2D view, it's like being in a 360 2D video or something. You wouldn't have this. It wouldn't feel great. There's a bunch of reasons it's not. I think please go and try this, everyone. I would love for people to give their own view on this. It's really hard to explain without trying it.
Yeah, I'm remembering there were pass-through filters that Valve showed off in the Valve Index reveal back in 2019 that I don't remember if they actually shipped. They just showed them at the debut. And then there was sort of a pass-through filter that Meta had, or back when they were Facebook, when they were first showing off the arena scale Dead and Buried, I think it was, demo at one of their Oculus Connects. But there was a mode where you would basically see the entire environment, or you felt like it was the entire environment was reskinned. And I remember, I think it was Jerry Ellsworth talking about Valve doing experiments a decade back, a really long time ago, maybe more like 15 years ago, about just, it never feels right. It always feels like a little bit like you're disassociating or something, looking at a CGI environment that it's all physical objects, but if it too closely resembles the actual stuff, it seems to be an odd feeling for some people.
I mean, I haven't seen that in any of the experiments I've tried of doing reskinning with the traditional techniques like 3D mesh. The technology 15 years ago maybe wasn't where it is today, or 10 years ago, I guess. I don't think there even was kind of pass through on the kind that we have today that's depth and stereo correct back then. So that would have been just showing you a literal camera feed. But yeah, that's interesting to point out that the Valve Index system does let you do these kind of manual, traditional is the word I should use, image filters. There are certainly interesting stuff you can do there with traditional theater techniques. I just think, like, if you're going, there's no conceivable way to make your room look like a cave in the Lord of the Rings with that. There's a super trippy feeling here where, again, I'm going to sound like a broken clock going over and over again, but it's so early and the technology here is so bad. But at the same time, you're like, whoa, imagine this a little bit better, and then every year it gets a little bit better. It's one of those things of seeing the very start of a long trajectory. And I'm going to repeat this again. Please, everyone, go and try this app out because it's fascinating.
I did a reskinning experiment in Apple Vision Pro, basically, of my entire environment, but I'm going to save that for our Apple Vision section. Let's get through the co-located multiplayer mixed reality games section, because I'm actually going to try to play this next one immediately after our download. I'm going to take the M5 Apple Vision Pro to try to meet someone here in New York and see if I can get a co-located Pickle Pro game going on Apple Vision Pro with someone else in the New York area here. That's a big moment to see sort of roll out on multiple systems, multiple headsets. Why don't you run through what the actual news is here?
Yeah, just before that, we have a comment from Don Hopper, who took the footage that's in our article for Decart, and he's saying, like, an example of just how different this is from traditional reskinning is that his motion simulator became a throne in one of these filters. So, it's an actual like king's throne from his motion simulator, and it just shows you that we're talking about a full image style transfer here.
Yeah, you know what I want? I want it to be. I think you should reskin it as the engineer's chair from the original Alien movie. That you're just getting into the engineer's chair when you're going into VR, or maybe the Matrix chair, that you're actually sitting back in Neo's little I can't remember what they call the terminal to get in, but anyways.
Nick Teeter in the comments is pointing out that it's the first thing that you'll see when you open SideQuest. So there you go, just open SideQuest and it's the first thing you'll see. But yes, let's move on. We're going to talk about 3 co-located multiplayer mixed reality games. Co-location meaning that you have multiple headsets in the same physical room sharing the same coordinate space in mixed reality. So you're seeing the same virtual objects in the same position. This is a trend that we've seen emerge over the past few years as headsets with mixed reality have just become a thing, right? Color mixed reality in a mainstream sense is only like 2 years old now from actually being a product you can buy at a reasonable price. Developers are really just starting to use this. Very few people would even have multiple headsets like this in their home, but over time it becomes more and more common, especially for enthusiasts. And there are obviously, parties and events you can throw where you have this. So one of the games is notable for this and another reason. And 2 of the games, actually. The first one is Pickle Pro from Resolution Games, and it is one of the only Apple Vision Pro games that has support for the PlayStation VR2 controllers, which will go on sale separately next month, as we talked about last week. But Pickle Pro lets you play either with bots or over the internet as personas, or in the mode we're talking about today, because it's interesting, co-located. And I actually played a similar kind of thing for badminton. There's a game called Home Sports on Quest 3. I was in a large room once with a Quest 3 S on my head and a Quest 3 on someone else's, and it looked really like this. This was actually very similar to the setup, and instead of pickleball, it was badminton, and we were kind of seeing each other in pass-through mixed reality with a virtual racket on each other's hands and a ball that nobody has to pick up because you can magically kind of pick it up in the air. Incredible fun. With VR itself, VR gaming, what's just as magical, if not more, as single-player VR for the first time is multiplayer, being next to your friend in a shared space. For mixed reality, I think is even more important. I think mixed reality hasn't really taken off as a gaming platform that much, but I think one of the things that really will be bigger maybe than single player, especially for embodied mixed reality, is this idea of being able to play together. It's so social. You're in the same room. You're not relying on voice chat. It's zero latency, real world sound, speaking with each other. And it's amazing. And I can't wait to hear what you think of trying this game today, Ian.
There's the example I'm thinking of. So I'm going to go to a very large space to try to do this. And I see one of our commenters saying, Davin, MR or VR in public parks will be a more common thing within the decade, I bet. I agree with you. There's some things like helmets I would almost recommend. If you're going to be running around with a slab of glass, it would be nice if you fell down, that the slab of glass didn't go into your eyeballs, if some kind of a shell kept it protected. But and we've seen things like Space Pirate Arena, which was phenomenal. In fact, there was if you go and ever play Spice Pirate Arena, you get a couple quests together and play that game. Notice the way the worlds shift and the UI that they have, sort of like, if you ever remember the movie Lost in Space from 1999, where it had the singular animation of the guy from Friends having this helmet rotate around his head in this really, really cool way. That's how the environment sort of falls into place in Space Pirate Arena. It's also how the UI, I think I saw in Dimensional Double Shift, shows and like builds out little panels to show you that someone else is looking at a 2D panel right here and is distracted from your current experience while paused. I'd love David to implement something like that. If he ever can build something, if he could ever build this studio in Android XR, it would be amazing. So I got a little distracted there by just the fun ideas, but this has been tried before, these big arenas, and it's magical to do. But there are all sorts of problems, like even the slightest dip in the ground would be trip-worthy, right? If you had just even the slightest little thing across a surface, you could have someone tumble out of place. But the reason I was going to talk about Pickle Pro in particular here is I have a home that has a nice living room with a horizontal, like a rectangular space on it. So it's shaped like this. And I could move back and forth in that rectangle pretty openly. I could hit a paddle like this in that little rectangle. But if I go too forward, I'm going to be hitting my hand against a piece of furniture. And if I move back, I'm hitting my couch. But I got this rectangle. The only other rectangle in my house that's similarly shaped is in the next room. And it's blocked by a wall, but there's a similar ground of rectangular space where someone else could be in a Vision Pro playing in that room against me in this room. And the crazy thing that I'm trying to paint in explaining that picture is two Vision Pros blocked by a wall, but if you do everything right, it will feel like X-ray vision to see through the wall at the other person and all of their body movements. You'll see them hitting and playing pickleball with you, even though that they are divided by a wall in between you. And what I'm describing is you just need little rectangles on the floor in multiple rooms in order to play VR with friends. And I'm seeing people in the comments mentioning 11 table tennis. We got to make a call out to just what a wonderful piece of software 11 table tennis is.
Yeah, so I think the issues that are being brought up by you and the commenters of the practicality of size here is very important. A lot of the games we're talking about right now, because they look the coolest and some of them are kind of, embodied, is fun to build and play, they're focused on this large space. And I see a commenter here saying that in a UK home, you would be slapping each other in the face. There's no size for this. You're right. That's very true. I'm in such a home myself. But this idea of shared space multiplayer doesn't have to be this large space embodied things. You could be playing a virtual board game together. You can play something that is kind of volumetric in a space in front of you. You can play with scale in an interesting way in VR and mixed reality that doesn't have to kind of conform to real scale. I think these are still interesting though. And I guess over time, one of the solutions here is a public park. But coming back to the UK, right now I can hear the strong rain outside that just appeared out of nowhere. And I don't think it was even forecast. And not going to happen in the UK until we get IP67 headsets, which is not going to happen for a very long time.
I just wanted to call out one of the comments here asking where the battery pack is in the screenshot image. And I appreciate that question because there is no visible place for this person to hold a battery pack unless it's like strapped like a sword to their back. So this is kind of misleading a little bit in just how bulky and awkward it is to use a Vision Pro with a fast-paced game where you're moving both your hands. I did this. I did a co-located experience last year with Vision Pro and Quest 3, and we were using the Quest 3 was using controllers. I was using Vision Pro, and when you start doing things too actively, you start hitting that cord, and it makes you mad. Really, really, really mad the moment you snag that cord. It's such that like you almost want to rip off the headset just snagging the cord just once.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point that we're going to bring up, and we will now, and we are now, about Apple Vision Pro and Samsung Galaxy XR. The cable is not shown in some of these marketing shots, but it's always there, and you will never forget that it's there. It's always there. And I think a lot of people don't give Meta and Pico and other companies like this enough credit for how convenient it is to just put a Quest headset on your head and walk off, and how amazing something like a fully standalone Quest is for room scale use in both mixed reality and VR. Every time I pick up my Quest 3 now, I think to myself, I'm so glad I didn't have to spend the amount of time and effort routing a cable around the back of my head. I put this on. There's a freeing, open feeling that we can talk all day about the advantages of an external battery, and they exist, but it has to be pointed out, as Ian is rightly pointing out, about the disadvantages too. Let's talk about this next co-located game, Spatial Rifts. It's another one on Vision Pro that uses the PlayStation VR2 controllers, or should I say controller. This one is an example of using one controller. You can see this clearly in the image. It is the classic game that everyone thinks about when you think about having mixed reality. Zombies invade your home. It sounds simple, but I actually think these games can be a lot of fun, especially if you have a friend. And this is an example of one that would work a lot better in a small home, because you don't need to have free space. You're in mixed reality. Your entire home can become the background for this. Apple Vision Pro does continuous scene meshing automatically in the background by its LiDAR. So you can walk around your home and have the zombies invade. And yes, we understand it is absurd to think of the idea of two people in the same home, in the vast majority of cases, owning a $3,500 headset. But the basic idea here is cool, and it's cool to see. And if you do have it, you're going to have the best fun ever, right? To be able to, be in a headset like this with 4K micro OLED displays and PlayStation VR2 controllers and shoot zombies coming in. It's cool to see developers start to build with these tools.
I think that looks like the Belkin bag there. That's my preferred bag for the Apple Vision Pro, because it has a strap on it that you can put over your shoulder right here, and then the bag can sit over here. And if you do it just right, you should put it like behind you, so that you're with the cord to the battery going behind you, so that in theory you don't snag the cord doing any motions up here, while the bag is sort of behind you over here with any batteries or accessories you've got with your headset. Yeah.
PH Wizards bring up a good point here, that with this, you could buy one pair of controllers and share them between the two headsets. Yes, my understanding is that would work indeed. You can use I think this person's using the right controller and this person's using the left. That would save you a lot of money, certainly.
I tried to get this across to David, but it's almost like Apple has turned the interaction paradigm inside out from the way Meta has done it, where like I can bring two controllers and give my other controller to someone to play Pickle Pro, and it's a bummer because I don't hold the other controller and I don't have the ball in my hand. I have to hit it because it's floating in space, instead of, like, the developer is still working on how to support all of the different configurations. But overnight, I have a whole bunch of situations where someone else hasn't paid $250 yet for the PSVR2 controllers. I'm going to take the left hand, you take the right hand, let's go.
Yeah, really cool. I do want to note that this concept here is supported on Quest. It has been for years now. It's called multimodal input. You can have hand tracking and controllers at the same time. A game could use a touch controller plus your hand tracking. Very few do. I think some of this just comes down to not having the time of trying to support multiple headsets, where not every headset supports this and things like that. But if you want to, as a developer, you can do this in Quest today.
The menu is on one, but the menu button is only on the right controller, and why would I want to support this in order to confuse users about how to get out of the menu between using the gesture or the controller button?
Well, I don't think it's confusing. If you've ever used hand tracking, you know how to bring up the menu. I can do it right now. I pinch here, and then it brings up the menu, right? You could hold the left controller and pinch like that. I don't think that's an issue personally.
I'm a left-handed person, so I'm always like leaving the right-handed controller in different places. And like, this has come up where I don't have the right controller right now to menu button myself. Well, I can do this.
So if the developer, you're right to say that if you're using an app that doesn't use this feature, multimodal, this is a per app feature developers have to enable. If you're just picking up one controller, but the app is actually in controller only mode, then you're correct. You cannot do that. But if the developer enabled multimodal, then overnight you can do that. If you're a developer that has intentionally chosen not to enable multimodal, but your game would suit one controller, please let us know why. Please contact me. I'd love to know why. In Unity, I've played around with this. On the surface, obviously there's implementation differences, but on the surface, it's a one checkbox. I'm really wondering, there are a few trade-offs, but there's none that seem to be relevant to the games that I think should be using this. I really would love to know why is Walkabout Mini Golf not using this, for example?
I mean, I think I've got your answer there. I mean, I would guess as to the answer there. I could talk to them and they could probably give you that answer directly from them.
Yeah,
but I mean, there's no value yet to me giving you the middle finger with my offhand. It's only a destructor it's only confusing to have a person have to use this menu and use the wrist menu and the controller menu. They have a game that that's where I've gotten stuck on this, where I've gotten the left-hand controller out to play the game. I left the right-hand controller down, and I'm now stuck inside Walkabout Mini Golf because they don't have the controller for the menu. So yes, but also I'm sorry,
yeah. Didn't you just describe them why it is useful? You're saying it isn't useful, but didn't you just describe why it is useful?
What, to have multimodal?
Yeah, so then you can.
No, I'm saying, yeah, I do need that, but also, what else am I going to do with my hand in that space? Do they save supporting that feature until there's something more useful to do with your offhand?
Maybe, but it's not I don't see why it has to have some super purpose. It doesn't have to do. It's there for social expression. When you're not looking at it, it's just being a tracked hand. You don't even have to show it. You could just do it for that one feature. I don't know. I feel like it doesn't. It's
also a small team that has to do this in an open 100%. Way that supports all headsets, exactly. And it's where in the
that part I get. That's what I said. I understand. If you're supporting a bunch of different headsets, you don't have time to go and implement the unique features. I just think it would be useful. I would love to see it happen, and I think the social aspect does matter. I think it would be great to high five your friend in Walkabout Mini Golf after you got a hole in one. But I'm absolutely sympathetic to the fact that developers have limited time. VR developers are some of the hardest working people in the world. I'm not saying, dev, add my feature. I'm just wondering, is there a specific solid reason that they're no, we're not even going to
for example, the going back to the giving you the middle finger thing, right? They've built a community around private room codes, yet they have quick match on certain devices and not on other devices. And the person who is logging into a game on their phone is in a completely different mindset, mode of play, dedication of their time than the person who's put on the VR headset and committed an hour to going in headset and going to a person. So the issues for trolling on quick play, random multiplayer matches are much, much higher when you're extended across both flat and VR this way. And in addition to the idea of a rando just joining our quick match with the ability to gesticulate so rudely very quickly.
I mean, that would be an argument against any multiplayer game with hand tracking. I don't find that convincing. I don't maybe you're someone in this audience.
Dimensional double shift, I can do this out of the box, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's that would be an argument against hand tracking in any multiplayer game. What if someone gives you the middle finger? Who cares? I don't care if some 10-year-old kid gives me a virtual middle finger. Maybe some people do.
How many hours of human review moderation does that equate at Meta headquarters or Walkabout Mini Golf headquarters to have to deal with those videos that are being submitted?
I mean, okay, enable it only in private room code mode then, so it's only with your friend. And, if your friend gives you the middle finger and you don't like it, that's between you and your friend. I don't think Meta or Walkabout Mini Golf have any responsibility to police that. But we can disagree on that.
Hopefully I'm not moderated off of YouTube for giving you the middle finger in the middle of our show.
I love that that's the only reason you can think of personally for hand tracking. You want to give me the middle finger specifically.
Yeah, I think yes, that is it's what I'm able to do when someone pisses me off in traffic. It's what I need to be able to do in VR when you make me mad. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to talk about our next topic. We've just talked about Pickle Pro and Spatial Rifts, two Vision Pro games that have co-location and PSVR 2 controllers. Let's talk about a really interesting new or upcoming, I should say, Quest 3 game that has co-located multiplayer. So back in May, we reported on Lasertag, an amazing free Quest game from Julian Treveri. And what's amazing about it, Lasertag, is that he implemented a custom system to do continuous scene meshing. So he's continuously building an environment mesh on Quest 3, leveraging the depth API. We've talked many times on this show about the big flaw in Quest 3's environment meshing, that you set it up per room, so you have to do that process if you haven't done it. It only reflects the positions and state of furniture during the scan. So if you had a furniture move, if someone was in the scan at the time, doesn't get reflected. Treveri's solution solved that. You can use a giant space and it continuously scene meshes. This happens automatically on Apple Vision Pro and on Galaxy XR because they have true active depth sensors. Quest 3 does not. So Lasertag, it's a simple game. It's got incredibly low friction. You boot up, you get automatically co-located, and you have little laser guns, and you shoot each other. It's a multiplayer competition. You could do 1v1, or you could have a whole team of people in a giant space, and the headsets are able to share their position. Amazing. I love Lasertag. I was able to try it once in quite a large hall. Bunch of fun. So great. The news this week is that one thing I should note actually just quickly about Lasertag is that the amazing thing, they made this open source, this solution, and so other developers have started to implement it. Hauntify, a great little Quest 3 spooky mixed reality game, good Halloween recommendation if you're demoing your headset to friends. Hauntify has implemented Julian Treveri's code into their game. Same solution. But the news here is not that. We already reported on that. The news is Wizardtag. It is a fork, or I guess a new game mode, wherever you want to call it, a new version of Lasertag from the original developer, Julian Treveri, that swaps out your laser gun for a wand that is voice activated for 3 spells: lightning, firebolt, and shield. So they're using this open source, low latency, on device speech recognition model to detect these 3 words. When you say the word from your wand, your touch controller that turns into a wand, the spell gets emitted. And so they actually built this for their universities. The university had this like contest for interesting things for inducting new students, like events you could put on. They threw this event. Their friend made a poster for them. They had this whole lore behind it of it being like a magical wizard parallel universe version of their university. One of their friends was a professor who gave a lecture that was the game's tutorial. Go to UploadVR.com and you can watch the full video of this, including audio, where they had all these students play this and have a lot of fun. At times you have, I think, like a dozen or more people in the same room. Really, really cool concept. And again, all of this is continuously scene meshed. So these barriers here, the cover, you can move it and it reflects it. The thing, remember when we talked about Lasertag, we talked about how you could close a real world door as the shield for your other team. The other team goes into this room back here and hides behind a closet and starts shooting their lasers over that closet. Close the door and their lasers will now bounce off the other side of that door and never hit you. Once you start mixing real and virtual like this, you can do some really incredible things. And so this is the same case for this cover you have here. Now, interestingly, whereas for Lasertag, mostly this is like a reskin and the voice actions are the new real functionality here. But the interesting underlying tech difference is that for the original Lasertag, they used Meta's shared spatial anchors, while for Wizardtag, they use April tags and the pass-through API to do computer vision and track these April tags that they had put up on the wall for this university event. They said they found that to be more reliable and stable and had less drift. These headsets, the code of this game is set up to just automatically keep calibrating everyone's position. The other fun thing about this is you can see these are virtual wizard hats. Everyone gets a virtual wizard hat put on their head that reflects their location. This screenshot shows someone just shooting a fireball. So this person is going to get hit unless they shout shield as quickly as they can and have their shield.
The wizard hat is such a fantastically fun game design idea for for showing where a person is over these barriers in just slightly little ways of you can't quite be hidden. I was joking with you about the idea of those old systems where you're in an inflatable, those old laser tag systems where you're in an inflatable building and you've got a sensor on your chest, and if you lean just right, you can hide the sensor on your chest so that you're exposing less of your body to the other people. I I want to know about the hitboxes of these games. Who gets that done really right? All the collision detection is extraordinarily hard. I'm extremely excited to get into our next section. Are there any comments that we need to talk about here before we do that?
Yeah, the last thing I want to mention about this is that it's not currently publicly available. It was only for this university's event. Julian is a very busy person, a very talented developer that has a lot of things to do, but they plan to bring this to the public build of Lasertag that is available right now on the Meta Horizon store for free. They plan to bring it to that as a new game mode, and I hope that's out by Christmas. I would love to, bring some Quest headsets over to my family and try this out at Christmas. They had a lot of fun with some of the other Colocated stuff I was playing with before. Uh, yeah, this is. I just want to say how cool this is. I love this. I love the idea. I love the technology behind it. Um, I We're talking again earlier about the idea of doing this in public, but I really wonder, when do we get to the stage where this technology is popular enough that it becomes a business model to just rent out warehouse style rooms for people to play co-located VR and MR and all of these things. I hope it happens. And maybe if you were an enterprising business owner doing this, you would put up April tags on the wall so that these systems can calibrate.
And you need to put it into an insane asylum where you've got padded walls as the defaults.
Well,
And
for VR.
I mean, so you had the Void would put you in a helmet, a padded helmet, so that when you bumped into the walls, you really didn't hurt yourself. You just had a nice little push of the padding into your head in your headset. You can't have that scenario work of renting out the rooms without signing the same kind of waivers you do at a skydiving place for health services, and then also have a talk about what's real and what isn't. That's very solid and clear of like, yeah, you've got hard edges along the bottom of this board that if you fell into it, you'd break your head open in a really awful way. The that's my that's everyone like Space Pirate Arena put this beautiful software out into the market that could have been used in exactly the manner you described. It might have been experiments out there, and it's just there's other barriers here. There's software-based barriers in order to implement in this.
I think the one pushback I would give there is that the Space Pirate Arena you keep bringing up is full VR. So you need this giant warehouse, and it needs to be a completely clear space where there's no physical objects that you could bump into. This is the reason that I think mixed reality is a lot more practical for shared space co-location is because you can see all of this geometry. They're seeing everything you see here. Sometimes it will be blocked out by the real world.
It's all depth incorrect pass through.
It's not. Quest 3's pass through is depth correct. That's the amazing part about it. I can walk around.
You would step up and down the stairs in a Quest 3?
Absolutely. I wouldn't in a Vision Pro. I have in a Quest 3. I have before, and I would again.
I'm going to need to see those videos. I want to see you running. I want to see you running up and down the stairs in your Quest 3 and falling down your stairs in your Vision Pro, because I need that. We need to explain that to people, what the difference is between having depth correction, because it's fundamentally like if you've got all the depth around you scanned by the headset, just reskin it as something else most of the time and bring back the elements that are going to collide with you in moments that you don't expect.
But I think this really comes down to what we're talking about here. People being able to see their physical environment makes them so much more willing to move around. Like, I'm sure you've done the VR demo where someone's in a really open space and they will not move their feet because they're in VR, even though they could. They don't trust that there's not something around them. In this, they can.
I can't accept that it's depth correct when we're looking through a fixed distance display.
That's different. That's a different aspect. Go and watch the video in our article about this. These people are running around this room, slamming themselves into the thing. I've played laser tag before as well. I said I played it, and I was doing the same thing, running around. Would I prefer to have this interface? Yes, I think this is another solution here. If you have an open periphery design, that would be the kind of solution I think here. I do understand what you're saying when it comes to having a closed periphery, but as we'll talk about later when we debate the benefits of open and closed periphery, I don't know. I have played laser tag like this.
So,
I'm really excited to play wizard tag like this.
well, let me use this as a transition to my impressions of the. Can we use that as my transition? Then we'll reverse the first two stories here. I'll talk about the dual band stuff.
Let's just go over it and do because it's going to be a lot more complicated if we have you just give impressions of a product that we then describe. It probably makes more sense to do.
That's fine.
Sure. Let's get on though. I understand you want to get onto that. Let's get onto this. Apple Vision Pro M5 has launched this week. We have a double headset launch week. Vision Pro and Galaxy XR. We're going to talk about Apple Vision Pro. Ian has a M5 Vision Pro, and you should go and read his impressions of the dual knit band on UploadVR.com because they are nuanced. It is not just a more comfortable or not. There are details here that Ian is going to run you through. Just for anyone that needs to know what is this headset, what are we talking about here? The M5 Vision Pro is essentially the same headset as the original Vision Pro, except they have swapped out the M2 chip for the M5 chip. This brings things like 10% higher rendering, support for 120 hertz, faster loading times, especially faster machine learning loading times, and it also has this new dual knit band that brings the advantages of both types of bands that are shipped in the original Vision Pro into one strap. It gives you that 3D knitted, comfortable material from the original solo knit band that ships with the M2 Vision Pro you see on screen now, while also giving you the top support that was in this dual loop band. So these are the two bands you got in the box with Apple Vision Pro M2. You can see them on screen right now. They each had their advantages, but neither was without trade-off to each other. With the new Vision Pro, Apple has introduced the dual knit band, which is available for people to buy for the old Vision Pro for $99, and Ian has been using it this week. So please tell us all about the dual knit band and Apple Vision Pro M5.
Yep, good choice there to order it this way. I got that there was one included in our loaner unit from Apple, which I will be putting on David's head for him to analyze as soon as we possibly can. But that's the one I've been spending my week in. Then I also bought the dual knit band for my Quest 2, my original Apple Vision Pro M2. So this band is now installed on two headsets here. I'm gonna give a specific example of last night. So last night I did two interesting tests with this specific band. I almost went to sleep in the band. And it was wild how much better it was than the previous dual loop band for that purpose. It was remarkable the way I could lay with my hand against my head almost exactly the way I do when I'm just going to sleep normally. I set the home screen to Jupiter, so I was on Jupiter, and I did a couple experiments just laying there with my eyes closed. And the first time I've ever done this, I interacted with virtual reality with my eyes closed. I said, "Hey Siri, set an alarm for 7 a.m." With my eyes closed, I watched. Siri's answering here for me again. With my eyes closed, wearing this dual knit band, Siri responds to me, and I see her light or its light ever so slightly against my eyelids from the darkness of where I'm laying my head inside Apple Vision Pro. So I know that Siri has responded and actually responded to me while my eyes are closed. If I open my eyes, I'm on Jupiter's moon, Amalthea, I think is what it's called. And I'm on the dark side of the moon. And I'm starting to I almost turned on Black Star, the final songs from David Bowie. And because this environment, you change it to night right here, and the whole solar system rotates around you, such that I am now on the dark side of Jupiter. The sun is on the other side of Jupiter, and Jupiter might as well be a dark black star right there in my vision because it has no light on it. It's OLED darkness right here. And I'm laying down, looking at the rocks with light on it. And after about, if you click on the three little dots here, you can tell it to pause time, make time move faster, or make time move at whatever their default rate is here. I don't think it's the real time rate for these elements. I tried all of those during this experiment of going to sleep with this dual knit band, and what happens is the sun moves around behind Jupiter and then pops out right here. And I'm laying my head down on Jupiter like this. And then, boom, even through my eyelids, the light comes through my eyelids. And I know it's now dawn on Jupiter. I open my eyes and there's the light casting onto the rocks of this little asteroid. And I realized, oh, I actually need to do the pause option. I needed to change it from moving slowly to just pausing time so that I could have the darkness of Jupiter and this black star right here in the middle of my night. And I'm just I went and messed with the mindfulness app is on there where you can do some breathing exercises to try to like do that sort of mindfulness exercises before sleep would be a great way to access this. But this is all, I'm talking about software that last year it was actually pretty problematic for me to try to do this. If I closed my eyes in a Vision Pro, it lost where my eyes were after a few seconds and jerked me awake because it changed the amount of light on the outside of my eyes. Here, the band felt it moved the weight around on my head such that I was flipping from left to right to face forward with all of my weight distributing into the back, whatever's cushion on the back of my head beautifully. So like I'm in a pillow, I'm laying my head on a pillow sideways, I'm laying my head on a pillow back. I pop this dial out to adjust one band. I pop the dial in to adjust the other band. And even in these little positions that I'm talking about, moving left to right, a little slight change to even one or two of these notches could suddenly move the weight from up here a little bit over here, a little bit up here. This band moves forward a little bit if you want to. This band can move up or down a little bit as you're getting the fitting right on both of these things. But that was one of two experiments I did last night. That was the band specific one. That one was wild too. What I was woken up by was the software, not by the comfort of the system. I actually forgot to turn on do not disturb mode. Wow. So I got a notification right as I'm going to sleep, a big iMessage right in the middle of my field of view.
I think that's very important to linger on and just repeat. With this headset, you were woken up not by the discomfort anymore, but by a software unrelated to the comfort. Yeah. I think that's really interesting to note. And just to reiterate for folks that didn't hear the start of the show, this part here at the bottom, one of the things Apple has done here is added tungsten inserts in here, not that are against your head. Your head isn't feeling any metal. I think you can confirm that. You don't feel the tungsten.
Feel anything now.
Exactly. It's inside or on the other side. Tungsten inserts, and this is a material that is more than twice as dense as stainless steel. So this is providing a counterbalance to this heavy headset that has been criticized for its weight. And here's Ian telling us that it's making a huge difference to the comfort of Vision Pro, if I'm hearing you right.
Yes, the back feeling here, what you're describing about those inserts or whatever, it's wild because the way these things stretch or push or mesh together into another object, like when I'm using a pillow or a couch, it just seems to dissipate everything that's happening up here. It gets dissipated into it becomes part of one soft piece against the back of your head.
I think, yeah, Apple is not getting enough credit, I think, for what they've done here. In fact, there was the opposite happened. When the M5 Vision Pro was announced, something you saw across social media was people going, "Oh, it's heavier. It's 150 grams heavier. Oh, how did they make a heavy headset heavy?" And then it turns out, if you're not an idiot and you actually look into it and read about it for more than 5 seconds, you realize the headset is identical weight. And people have weighed this, right? Other people have weighed this. The strap is where the weight is in the back. So Apple have done. We often talk on this show about the trade-offs between a soft strap and a hard strap. A hard strap giving you a counterbalance, a soft strap letting you lean your head back on a sofa, a chair, a pillow, a plane seat. Apple has brought both into the same design. They've got the advantages of both. It's a soft, and we'll talk about this when we talk about Galaxy XR, and this is why I'm really, really talking about this. They're giving you a counterbalance for the weight of the headset in a design that is still a soft strap to you. The tungsten inserts are, as far as I understand, embedded here, such that, as Ian is describing, it's not one like giant, large plastic or metal. You can still have your head kind of melt into a pillow, and you don't even realize that there's this incredibly heavy material in the back of the head because it's not interrupting anything you do. So I think this is like a remarkable piece of, I guess, materials engineering from Apple, whatever you want to call it. And I think we want to really just highlight that it's interesting to see Ian's report on this, because this is one of those things that's non-obvious. I don't think anyone was saying when we were having these discussions about soft straps versus hard straps, well, what if you inserted tungsten into the soft strap? This is something that I think is very, very clever. This is one of the rare times where there has been an obvious trade-off space in VR, and a company has come along and said, I refuse the prospect. I refuse the concept of the trade-off. I'm going to give you both, and here's how.
And it's remarkable that they kind of, they called it a solo knit band was the technical name of it. Why would they call it, like, they have the dual loop band and they have the solo knit band? They must have had the dual knit band on the planning it while they shipped these other two. So, like, there's a multi-year planning effort of, eventually we'll get that. And actually, I think there's 3 products here that Apple's shipping right now in their Vision OS line. And I want to talk about them separately a little bit. You have the front object, right? You have the standalone VR headset. It's one piece when you consider the battery that connects to it on the other side here. So that is one unit, right? It's the headset and a battery. But they also are selling a $300 dev strap, which it's not in our lineup, but you replace this piece with a strap that also gives you a little USB cord right here. And the little USB cord, yeah, there it is right there now. And you can connect over a 20 gigabit per second connection to a Mac or probably other devices with a very, very high throughput USB port. Then they've got the band, and the band disconnects on the inside here with a really easy, like, it could fall off. You don't want to hold the headset by the band because of how easily it could fall out of those 2 connectors right there. But that's really 3 separate products, what I just described. You've got the and the USB port is totally immaterial to users, right? That's only for developers to use to plan what to do for the future, right? So users are getting one unit ultimately now that is a much more refined version of what they shipped 2 years ago. Not just the better chip, but this band remarkably changes the experience overall. I described it in my first write-up as it's a slog to spend 6 hours in the original bands of the Vision Pro. It's not a slog to do it in. I've spent more hours in Vision Pro in the last 2 days than in the previous 2 weeks, partially because the band is such a major improvement for me. I saw a question from Andrew earlier asking if the big red spot swirls on Jupiter. Yes, it does. It does it very slowly. And if you don't have the attention span to look for it, you won't actually notice it, because plenty of people might not ever notice that there's motion there. But again, you stay there long enough, and you realize the moons and the sun are actually moving around, and you can adjust the speed, and it's a lot of magic. And yes, the swirl is there, and you can rotate the orbits of everything to bring the big red spot around.
And this is all through 4K micro OLED displays that you're seeing this with the true blacks and infinite kind of contrast. So I may have to restart the app shortly here, but just before we move on, there are a couple of questions I want to respond to in relation to the M5 Vision Pro. A lot of people are asking about battery life. So it's the exact same external battery. It's identical in terms of its capacity. However, the M5 here has actually been tuned for a balance of improved performance and efficiency. They have not put this in and tuned it all the way up to the max performance of the M5. And that's a really interesting decision that we need to note here. In theory, they could have, and given you the same battery life. In theory, they could have given you less battery life by pushing it further and further. They've actually made a very interesting decision here. So you get 30 minutes more battery life, according to Apple, than you did with the original. And that's why the M5 isn't at full performance. We're also going to, over time, you want to see how does that affect things like fan speeds. Do we get lower fan speeds? We haven't had enough time, I don't think, yet to really assess that. The other question I've seen in our audience here, and always feel free to ask these kind of overview simple questions. Someone was asking, can you plug it into the wall and use it indefinitely? Yes, for both Apple Vision Pro, both models, and Samsung Galaxy XR, if you plug sufficient wattage USB-C supply into the battery, it will then forward that onto the headset itself while charging, so you can use it perpetually. That's how I use it on a flight. I have my Vision Pro on a 10-hour flight. I'm using it for 8 hours of the time. So like this idea that some people have, there is this idea, another one of those ones of, that I use my idiot voice for, of, when it was announced, it doesn't even have enough battery life to watch The Lord of the Rings. When would you ever be sitting down to watch a movie in this thing where there's not a power socket near you? There are some scenarios, sure. You can use a portable battery, though, for those scenarios. But let's be honest. If you have a headset that you're using sitting down and there's already a cable coming out of your head, it's not that much of an inconvenience to add another cable, just like a lot of people do for their laptops, for example. So yes, in practice, a lot of the time you're using Vision Pro for extended periods, you will have the battery plugged in to a power socket at the wall.
Yeah, I'm bothered again, as our commenters have noted, that this photo does not show the battery pack being there. I would assume that it's running down his back, and he's got it sitting on the back of the couch. When they put out these press photos, they got to give you a plausible location for the battery pack to be, I guess. Yeah, it's a little annoying though that they didn't include it.
Quickly, if you want to say some more stuff about your time in Vision Pro, it'd probably be a good time.
Yeah, well, David's restarting here. I'm going to give the other example of something I did last night. So I'm laying down in bed. I'm going through movies. There's, is it Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk and Gemini Man? There's Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. Yeah, and Hobbit is also shot in high frame rate 3D, but I haven't been able to view it. So Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk is one of the few movies that was shot in very high frame rate 3D. And then Gemini Man, I believe, was also shot in high frame rate 3D. But I think Billy Lynn's is actually shown in higher frame rate 3D inside VR. But I was trying to figure out what frame rate I was actually viewing it at. Couldn't figure that out last night, but it did feel amazing to watch a 3D movie that appeared to have higher frame rates and everything else. Anyways, I'm laying down watching the 3D movie, trying to test out all the different things in the M5 Vision Pro. And I think there's an app called, is it Shaderscape? I open up Shaderscape on the M5 Vision Pro. If I've got the name of the app wrong, I apologize. But it's a whole bunch of like sample projects of code that you can edit yourself to mess with shaders for various things in the environment. One of them uses the scene meshing that the Vision Pro is doing constantly, and then overlays glowing dots over all of the physical geometry in your space. So it basically does the reskinning stuff that David was talking about earlier, not AI generated, but it reskinned my entire environment. So I'm laying there in bed, and I activate this app that reskins my entire physical environment. And I love the comment. I have to mention Biggs that we would love to see David's face when I get going here trying to describe something. I'm in full virtual reality. There's no pass-through being shown to me whatsoever. I went and did that option I said earlier where I turned surrounding recordings off. So I have a recording of this, of what is a 5-minute journey where the Shaderscape app, this app, scans my entire home. I I sit up from bed from watching a 3D movie, and I have a view of my home that is only 3D mesh. I'm walking from my bed to the door in mesh. I've got no pass through provided whatsoever. I get close to the door, and that's when it alerts me that I'm getting close to a physical object. And it actually breaks in the pass through a little bit to show me my physical environment. I reach the door, I open it. Now I wait for the mesh data. The physical pass through goes away. And the mesh data now sees that there's an open door here where there was a closed door before, and boom, it's scanning again into the next room. I walk into the next room, and it's again scanning. And again, I have to be clear here. I'm not seeing pass through. I'm not seeing my physical environment at all, except for these moments through my journey through my home. I provided this app what was essentially a scan of my entire home, and I'm walking into other rooms and seeing the walls rooms away from me represented still through the way this app works. I'm giving myself x-ray vision through my own house, and multiple times over this 5 or 6 minute scanning journey, it brought in the physical environment only at the moment I needed it to see that I wasn't going to collide with a person or the environment. So my wife walks up to me at one point. It breaks her out. I get a cute photo of my baby who's making eye contact with me. And she is cut out, and they are cut out from this virtual reality environment that I've just made entirely virtual reality. The definition of what I have seen is entire virtual reality skinned to the physical geometry of my home. And here is this M5 system keeping me immersed, even though I'm not able to see my where my feet go in front of me. I'm still safe. I'm still feeling comfortable visually. I'm not seeing any uncomfortable collisions between the depth of my couch being shown in pass through and the depth of this 3D geometry around me.
I think that's really important to note. Actually, the Vision Pro's sensing capabilities are really on a different level. Ian's talking about seeing the raw output from the LiDAR, not pass through, just the LiDAR's reconstruction of his environment. And Vision Pro uses that all the time. It's always on, it's always being used, so that it doesn't need a guardian system, a boundary system. It's not like your headset, like a Quest or, on a PC VR system where you're setting up Chaperone. It just works. You're in a room, you can go into VR, you're in a fully VR environment or a VR game, right? You get near your couch, you get near a door, you get near a wall, it fades in pass through. Not in the primitive Quest way of just setting a bubble around you and fading it in, but because there's an actual object there that the LiDAR sees as you get near to it. So in theory, if the developer sets up the correct mode in the app, there's different modes you can set. Like if the developer sets up the mode for room scale, you could walk around a warehouse in VR and never have to get any pass-through interruption until you get near the wall of that warehouse without ever having to set up a boundary. There's no scanning. There's no putting your controller out and drawing. It just works. And I think that's actually a really super interesting point to bring up, because it makes Vision Pro have this kind of frictionless VR experience that people often think of it as not being a VR first headset, but it does have some interesting features that make it better for VR in some ways, in certain aspects, in terms of how it relates to the fact that while you're in a virtual world, you're in a real room. That's the reality, right? And as Ian says, there are also computer vision features that go beyond any other headsets, like person detection, the ability to see someone that walks into the room. You're in your full VR game. Your wife walks into the room and you see your wife there segmented out, as an example.
Yeah.
So, interesting point, Ian.
Yeah. And devs are only beginning their journey of figuring out how to use these tools. So one of the apps I popped up the Muse 3D pen that is now available to pair with the Apple Vision Pro. I've got the controllers, the PSVR2 controllers, to pair with the headset as well. The headset is handling all the breaking out of the hand. So like you can see your hand gripping the object, but it's merged beautifully with a paddle that's coming out here. So I get this really nice effect where it's just the paddle in VR here. I only see my hand gripping it here, and I'm getting only mixed reality right in this region. The rest is virtual. And when I'm going to record it for viewers, I don't even show my hand. I don't show the pass-through environment. I'm only showing pure virtual reality paddle to the other viewer, and I've got something shareable for other people. So years ahead, the competition is where I feel Apple is software-wise. And that's a little unfortunate for me to say without having the freshest demo of Galaxy XR on my head that you had, what we'll talk about here in a minute. But still, I need to hear you say whether you think they're years ahead or whether that's just me speaking here.
No, I broadly agree. Very much so. That is another really great point, that in a Quest headset or a PlayStation VR 2 or SteamVR, you don't see your hands and arms in a VR game by default, or even at all in most of these systems. You see a rendered version of a hand, an arm, or a body that's based on your hand tracking or controller tracking. In Apple Vision Pro, by default, you're in VR. You see a segmented version of your real hand and arm. It's as if it's the same exact technology that Zoom uses to cut you out to put you on a virtual background. Same exact concept. It's just computer vision segmentation. And they run a per eye segmentation model for each hand and arm, for each eye, for both of your hands and arms. Now, it doesn't work too great when you get into low lighting, right? If your real room is dark, it starts to fall apart. But if you have good lighting in your room, that means that you're in a VR world, but you look down and see your real hands and arms. And that doesn't get talked enough about as a fundamental feature of Vision OS, because it's incredibly, incredibly cool.
Okay, David's fantastic here, but let me talk about last night, specifically going to bed in VR. I have Siri commanding the lights in my room, right? And so I'm laying down in bed, and my hands are actually the segmentation that Apple has gone to lengths to do in hardware that no other manufacturer has done, right, is actually a distraction in the moment when I want to go to bed. I actually don't want my arms as I'm going to bed. So I say to Siri, I don't want her to answer right now, to turn off the lights. And what I get instead of the breakout hands is the operating system seeming to know that I actually kind of maybe don't want the breakout hands. And what I get instead are the ghost hands, the little thinly outlined ghost hands showing that the headset knows what my fingers are doing, but can't see them well enough to show my own hand.
Yep.
And you know what I did? I took a screenshot, I think it was, with my head. You can reach above your head and press the two buttons on the headset to take a screenshot. And what it does is it flashes a little bit of light out the front display of the EyeSight, and it made my hand visible for the second that I did the screenshot, and then it went back to ghost hand.
So, yeah, I mean, what you're describing as a feature, which is interesting, is a fallback. It's a fallback for when there's not enough light. I think for me, I always want to see my real hands and arms if possible. For you, maybe you don't. That's a personal preference. That's very interesting to hear, actually. For me,
not while I'm going to bed.
I don't know if there's any difference to me. I mean, I would rather see my hands even if I'm in bed or not. I don't understand the distinction there. But look, personal preference. I'm not going to tell you what you want's wrong. I'm just saying it's very interesting to hear that, because I wouldn't have assumed that.
Yeah, very interesting comments out there. And yeah, sorry for the sort of lengthy way I've had to walk through these experiences. We have audio listeners that can't see my gesturing, and we really want to try to describe what this looks like as detailed as it possibly can be, because you can't really necessarily see this if you go do the demo in store. Yeah. You'll just see the highly controlled content that they want you to see. You won't necessarily see the underlying power you might get to play with as a dev.
Yeah.
One of the devs did you insert a scene that overlays over your scene, and then you erase the elements that are colliding with your physical environment, and so you get a merged two scenes right in front of you. It's kind of it was a little janky, but it was a very cool idea.
Yeah, just very conscious of time here. So we're going to move on to our last section of Galaxy XR and Android XR. We spent a little bit more time on Apple than we maybe expected, but I think we had a great discussion there. So that's not a bad thing in itself. But let's definitely move on so that we're not kind of lodged into that one for too long. The other big headset that launched this week is not just a refresh, not just a new chip and a new strap. It's a fundamentally new platform. It's Android XR from Google. And the first headset it's on is Samsung Galaxy XR. It is an $1,800 headset with 4K micro OLED displays, eye tracking, hand tracking, face tracking, an external tethered battery, automatic IPD adjustment, a depth sensor to do the same kind of environment sensing that we just talked about Apple Vision Pro doing. And its controllers are optional, and they are $250 extra. Or if you order them before November 17th with the headset, there's a 30% discount to get them for $175. So, depending on when you order, your price here for the headset and controllers could be anywhere from $2,050 to $1,975. So you're talking, we're going to refer to it for simplicity here at times as a roughly $2,000 headset, just for simplicity. It's a little cheaper if you don't want the controllers, obviously. But that puts the headset itself at around half the price of Apple Vision Pro. And in some ways, the proposition here is that it is an Android Apple Vision Pro, a Vision Pro for people in the Android Google ecosystem rather than people who are in the Apple ecosystem. That's fundamentally the product proposition. But as I'm going to explain over time here, especially when we get to my impressions, it's actually on a hardware level, there are some major differences, and the form factor is actually fundamentally quite different. But one thing we want to note about the controllers, by the way, is that they are currently out of stock. You can pre-order the next batch, which some people are getting shipping estimates of late November of controllers, which means that unless Samsung is able to get more of those available out there, those controllers may come weeks after your headset if you do decide to order the controllers. We'll have to see if they're able to do some stock and logistics magic to speed that up or not. The other thing we want to note is that it's in the US and South Korea only. There are no announced plans for this headset to come to any other regions. That doesn't mean it won't happen, but it does mean that there are no announced plans. So let me bring up a spec sheet that we have here on UploadVR.com because I think, where did the spec sheet go? Stand by. Yeah, we're going to bring up a spec sheet so that we can tell you about the headset.
So I was going to look at the comments while David finds the spec sheet. I didn't realize I was on mute while I was trying to say that the first time. I see some people saying they're trying to get rid of their Quest 3, looking to sell it. That is the time of the year that everyone is thinking about, trying to figure out whether they can maybe net a couple $100 or so to help them purchase something new. This photo that David put up was the key moment that I sort of wrote about based on this demo. David got to go into headset for about 25 minutes. I was his videographer for this. I really wanted David to make sure he got his first hands-on with the headset before we had to chase down review hardware ourselves. And we spent about 2 hours, maybe it was, sitting in front of them demoing the headset right in front of us. What's remarkable here is if you go and find any of the B-roll that was shot or provided by Samsung in this room, this is the only headset that's operational. So a whole bunch of influencers and YouTubers were in this room wearing headsets that had no battery attached and could not see anything except a black screen. They were taking their selfie shots of it. The photos I took of David, the photos that he used in his hands-on write-up, are from him actually using an operational device. I have video that he turned into a GIF that shows him actually using a device. He's trying all the hard movements on it. Yeah, why don't you walk through it now, David?
Yeah, we'll get into that demo soon. We're just going to quickly run over what this headset is fundamentally. So you get micro OLED displays that are actually slightly higher resolution than Vision Pro. We're just going to talk about the headset on paper first. Interestingly, the refresh rate is 72 hertz by default, and apps can toggle up to 90. That's the same as Quest, except Quest 3 obviously gives you a 120 option. And the big difference is in the home space for Quest, it's 90. Meta does not adhere to its own default, is a way of putting that. It goes above. Fundamentally, this is running a chipset that is slightly more powerful than the one in Meta Quest 3. It's about 15 to 20% more powerful on paper. I have to swap out a battery here. Stand by. But it has double the RAM. It also has dynamic foveated rendering all the time running. So the big difference here, fundamentally, though, of this headset compared to what you might be used to on a Quest 3 or Vision Pro is that it has an open periphery design with a forehead pad, not a ski goggle style headset design. And it has a rigid rear strap. I'll get into that very soon when I talk about the impressions. IPD is automatic. The pass-through cameras are the same resolution as Vision Pro. The battery life is the same as Quest 3 on paper. It has hand tracking. It has eye tracking. It has face tracking. A lot of other outlets erroneously said that it did not have face tracking. It does have face tracking. Trust UploadVR when it comes to these things. It does not have the torso and arm tracking of Quest 3. You'll notice the only tracking feature Quest 3 has over these headsets is torso and arm tracking. It does have an active depth sensor. It's not LiDAR. It's DTOF. It's very similar. It has Wi-Fi 7, which includes 6 gigahertz. The thing about Vision Pro M5 is that because it's the same headset, it still has the old Wi-Fi 6, not even 6E, but 6. So it does not even, Apple Vision Pro doesn't give you 6 gigahertz. Quest 3 and a Galaxy XR do. You have the Google Play Store on there that includes a huge majority of the 2D apps that you might have on your Android phone or Android tablet. Those purchases all carry over, and that includes Netflix. It is the only headset with an official Netflix app that you can have downloads on. It's just the same one you would have on your tablet or phone, but it's there on the Google Play Store. It's something that Meta wanted for their Quest headsets. Google said no. The reason seems clear here. Google wants it as one of the unique selling points for its software platform. The browser here is Google Chrome, so all your Google Chrome passwords are there. You have all your other Google services like Google Photos are there. Google Photos has a unique capability. A bunch of these headsets that we have talked about before can do 2D to 3D photo conversion. Android XR is the only currently that we're aware of that can do 2D to 3D video conversion as a system level feature. It is done in the cloud, like many Google features. From your perspective as a user, it just works, but that's notable. It's not on device. I tried it, took 5 seconds, turned the video into 3D. Remarkable technology. It has iris unlock like Vision Pro. It is 256 gigabytes of storage. There is no other storage tier. So I just wanted to quickly run over the specs before we kind of jump in to talking about our impressions here. But yeah, let's get straight in there. Ian and I attended the launch event in New York. We started by watching the live stream that you may have all seen. We were there live. You can actually see us in the audience at times in their launch event. That the video that they put out as the launch event was not truly live. It was actually a recording of the event we were at. Afterwards, our scheduled demo was something like 5 hours later. So we spent the next 4 to 5 hours, however long it was, directly in front of a Google representative using the headset. And so they had a headset, a giant whiteboard. I think we can probably even bring up the image here. Yep. They had a headset and a giant whiteboard behind them showing a casted view. And so for 4 or 5 hours, we were in this room with a bunch of press who, as Ian brilliantly points out, were all sitting, taking nice pictures of themselves wearing non-functional headsets, right? Headsets that didn't even have a battery attached, never mind having any software on board. And they're all sitting there taking pictures and talking. No offense to them. That's, influencers as well. They can do that if they want. But while they did that, we went up here and sat right beside these people and asked them to go through the whole OS. So this is a really weird situation where we had 25 minutes with the headset on, but we had 4 hours of we were, half a meter away from this woman and the other Google reps who put on the headset at times. And we were having a conversation with them for multiple hours, I think I'm correct in saying, where we were able to say, hey, can you go in and do that? Can you do that? Can you open Walkabout Mini Golf? Can you go change this setting? Can you do the likeness? Can you show us what this looks like? Can you try this? Can you try this? I'm sure they hated us. Maybe they didn't. I think I'm being a little bit self-deprecating there, but we were a bit annoying in how much we asked. But they provided great answers, to be fair to them. We also got to talk to a Samsung rep who confirmed us, the controllers aren't in the box. VR gaming is not a focus for this headset. So that's how we spent a lot of the launch event, literally a meter or so away from this rep who was live demoing what we asked them to do. Very interesting demo situation. After that, we got our own demo where we got to put on the damn thing ourselves, an actual unit, not a functional pretty pictures unit. And that was unfortunately only 25 minutes. And I really strongly wish that it was longer, but it was not. That was the time we were given. And it's very, very challenging to review is not the right word, to even give impressions of an entirely new platform in 25 minutes. Never mind, give you kind of details and things. But we tried our best. You can see my article pinned in the comments right now on UploadVR.com, and we'll walk you through it. The first thing I want to make so clear about this is that the form factor is deeply notable. In renders, a lot of people will immediately go, oh, it's a Vision Pro clone. And sure, from the front, there are certain aspects of design here that you could compare to Apple Vision Pro, the actual visor. But go any further past that, and it's a fundamentally different system with very different ergonomics. So starting at the back, building on that discussion that we had about the rear of the strap, Apple Vision Pro has a soft strap. This has a fixed hard strap that you cannot remove. It's not modular. It's not like your Quest. You will have this hard strap unless maybe you're a hardware modder that's comfortable with, doing soldering electronics. I don't know. Maybe those people figure out. The vast majority of buyers will have this hard strap for the lifetime of the headset. That means that you cannot lean back on a pillow or a bed or a chair or an airplane seat. I've used straps that are pretty much identical to this at the rear on a plane before out of curiosity. I hated it. I wanted a soft strap. That's something you have to note. If you don't care about those use cases, then you can ignore this because the strap is all upside. It gives you a counterbalance. It's nice and snug. It kind of covers your headset here. Great. If you do care about those use cases, you need to know that. You need to know that this isn't like for Vision Pro. And that's only the front. That's only the back. On the front, the differences are even more stark. This is not, fundamentally, there are two different ways.
Not removable on the back.
Sorry?
There's a question. Was it removable on the back? No.
No, this is non-removable. That's what I'm trying to say. If you are a DIY hacker that can do, I don't know, maybe some people figure this out. I'm saying that because there are electronics in this. This is a touchpad, for example. I don't think you can, theoretically, I'm sure there are going to be some modders who figure out this. As a typical user who doesn't want to rip apart your $2,000 headset and potentially break it forever, no, it's not removable. So you're stuck with this back padding for the lifetime of the headset, okay? And that needs to be noted. If you just want to do VR gaming and you're never putting your head back against anything, again, maybe you don't care about that, but we're noting it for the people who maybe want to do these other use cases that we're talking about. Okay, coming to the front where the differences are even more stark. If you've used Quest Pro, you're going to know a lot of what I've just said. If you own a Quest Pro, you'll know it even better. If you've never used a headset with that sort of design, you may not even realize just how fundamentally completely different it feels. There are fundamentally two ways to attach a 500-gram visor to the front of your face, the front of your head, I should say. You can use a traditional face pad, face gasket, light seal, whatever these companies want to call it, that pushes against your upper face, or you can use a forehead pad that puts all the weight into all the pressure onto the top of your forehead, the top of your skull. Going back to kind of this image of Ian in Vision Pro, for example, look what's happening here. Look how this is being attached to his face. And then the thing is, Galaxy XR has a really kind of clever design. I really like the design from an aesthetic perspective. It's very, very aesthetic, in my opinion, that hides the fact almost that this is a Halo style strap on the front at least. It's not strictly a halo, but it's a halo-like in that this is what's here. Like you could theoretically get rid of this part or whatever, and that would be different, but this is what's really attached to your face. And this feels completely different to what you're going to be used to with a ski goggle style strap on a Quest 3 or a Vision Pro. And there are some trade-offs that are notable. So firstly, let's talk about why is it done in the first place? What's the advantage? Well, there's a massive advantage. On the ski goggle style headset, like a Vision Pro, some of this pressure, it's distributed, but some of it goes against your sinuses, right? On your upper cheek and your kind of just above the middle of your eyebrows. The sinuses absolutely detest pressure. It's one of the reasons that VR headsets are considered uncomfortable by many people, because you're squishing weight against your sinuses. That's why it hurts. This design puts it on the top of your forehead, away from your sinuses. So these sacs of fluid, or I'm not familiar with the precise biology, but they're not being squished. Okay, and that's great. For some people, this design that keeps the pressure off your sinuses is supremely comfortable, and they love it. The problem is, depending on the shape of your skull, for some other people, it's agonizing. And this was the thing about Quest Pro. Quest Pro is not a headset that I could ever answer the question in a single word, is it a comfortable headset? Because the answer is, some people will tell you, the Quest Pro is the only headset they've ever found comfortable. And others will tell you, it's so painful that they returned it. That's the issue here. The thing about, if you're a reviewer or a tech journalist about a TV or a phone or a speaker, a lot of these things are objectively measurable and easily kind of distinguished. When it comes to things that you wear on your head, so much of this comes down to the nuances of the different shapes of our skulls. And so, as I noted in the article, I expect that one day you'll be able to download an app on your phone and scan your skull, the shape of your skull. This sounds absurd, but it's true. And it will tell you, this is the right strap for you. This is the right strap for you. Your skull suits this. Until then, it's a little bit of a guessing game. It's a little bit of, you need to try this hands-on. So that's one thing I really want to make so clear. There are other issues, though, just in the sheer comfort when it comes down to this design here. And it is how it positions the lenses in front of your eyes. So depending, again, on the exact shape of your skull, not something that is ever normally brought up in mainstream tech media because it doesn't apply to the vast majority of products, depending on the exact shape of your skull, where this pad will be relative to your eyes, depending on how set in or out your eyes are, again, your skull shape, these lenses will be at a different depth relative to your eyes. You can see here from my skull shape, these are really quite far out. Now, what is handled perfectly by Galaxy XR is the horizontal positioning. It has automatic IPD adjustment, just like Vision Pro. If you're not familiar with that, on Vision Pro, you hold a button at the top and the lenses, guided by eye tracking, move into position. It's the same thing on on Galaxy XR, except you don't even have to hold the button. You tap it once. It's actually faster than Vision Pro, in my experience at least. It just instantly went, and they were in position, and that was it. So horizontally, great. But we're in a 3D world. There are three other axes, and one of them is this depth axis. These headsets also make it a little bit more difficult to do the kind of vertical axis, but that didn't seem to be a problem in my time with this. It was the depth issue where I wasn't actually getting close enough to these lenses to be able to get the full field of view. There was also the issue that you can actually test this at home if you have a Quest headset. Intentionally move the lenses a little bit further from your eyes, like hold the headset up without a strap on and move it a few centimeters forward and notice what happens to the image. You get this perceived display brightness inconsistency. You'll get worse binocular overlap. You can simulate this today at home with your Quest headset. So on some headsets, there's a solution for this. Like Quest Pro has what's called eye relief. So even while keeping this here, you can adjust the depth of the visor on a Quest Pro. Galaxy XR does not have eye relief. So you're stuck, sort of. What I learned after this demo, when Samsung finally sent us the details and all, what's in the box, the spec sheet, all of these things, we didn't get this during the demo, we got it after, days and days after, was that in the box, there are cushion size adjusters. So this seems to be two different sizes. Now, I don't know what size I used in this demo. They didn't tell me. I wasn't aware that this was a possibility. But it is entirely possible that if I were to use another one of these adjusters, when I actually get this headset in my home, that this problem will go away. That's something, this is why there is a recurring theme of this show is that we point out that there's a massive difference between a hands-on impressions and a review. Hands-on impressions is a company invites you to a controlled demo and walks you through something for 20 minutes. A review is you buy the product or are sent it and you use it in your home for weeks or the very minimum days, and you find out all these little details. So that's an important thing. So right now, what we can say only is that there's a possibility that this might not suit your head from a comfort perspective, and that might even affect what you see through the displays, through the lenses, I should say. But we won't know until we're able to try these different forehead cushion adapters.
Geek Odin out there is saying the Quest Pro and Samsung headsets both give me a headache after 10 minutes every time. Then I think earlier Guy asked us whether we got to see Virtual Desktop tested in front of us or whether we got to test it ourselves. No, we did not. That image that I showed of Walkabout Mini Golf being played, and that is an answer to another question. That was Walkabout Mini Golf. That is one of the games on Galaxy XR. You can find a full list of all those games as it's been put together by my colleague out there, Henry Stockdale. He's been talking to a lot of devs and putting together that list as it's been getting added. It was a little confusing to our readers, but I got to point out, since Guy is asking the question about games and what we saw, we asked them to launch this because we saw it in the menu. It's like, can you launch Walkabout? I see it up there. This is the demo person launching it for the first time. They're like, yeah, I'm here in Walkabout, and they're trying to figure out how the controls work, which if you've ever played Walkabout, it can be a little bit hard on your first time in there to figure out their particular way of interacting with everything. She gets out of the demo and she hands it off to another Google rep, who I think is the one who was actually on stage giving the presentation that you all watched. He takes the two controllers and puts them together like this. He doesn't do that gesture, but he puts the controllers together like this because I think that's how he thought that the game was played, was putting the two controllers together to eventually become the putter. And it was very odd to see. Where David and I, several people are like, there's only one controller needed for Walkabout, so they go and put the other controller down. He teleports up to the spot up there. I point out that you can get to the slingshots up there. He reaches over to the slingshots, and very quickly he's firing slingshots off in the welcome island of Walkabout. Just that was the totality of VR gaming that I was able to get them to demonstrate. And we asked them to launch PC streaming during that demo, and they could not. They didn't explain why it didn't run, but we did ask for it. They did look like they tried to get it going, and it didn't get going.
Yeah, I think they were trying to use it off some laptop or something. That, it's understandable why at a conference Wi-Fi situation it might not work. I want to really linger on that Guy Godin comment there. That's the developer of Virtual Desktop saying Quest Pro and this Samsung headset hurt his head after 10 minutes. Not just hurt his head, give him a headache. So one thing I noted when the Google rep took off the headset, one of the Google reps, was that they had this very intense red mark on their forehead. Now, we all know about VR face where it's too tight, but this looked like deep. This looked like it was not just like a red mark. It was actually like an imprint into their forehead of using this for a long time. And so this is the issue with these forehead pad designs, these kind of halo style designs on these headsets. It looks great in marketing. And I want to, so much of the show is sometimes us complaining about mainstream tech media's reporting about this. And, maybe some of it's tooting our own horn, but I think sometimes the nuance we bring here is very valuable. And this is one of those cases, because so many of the hands-on impressions I saw of this were, oh, it's a cheaper Vision Pro and it's more comfortable. And it's like, no, that's not what this is. This is a fundamentally different design that is going to be more comfortable for some people and going to be physically painful for others. And the real important thing here is, but nobody who got a 20-minute demo can tell you whether it's comfortable for multiple hours. That's a literal impossibility, right? They can tell you if it's uncomfortable. They can say, it was comfortable for my time. But the fact that mainstream tech outlets are trying to tell you how comfortable a headset is that they've worn for 20 minutes should have you never trust them about VR ever again.
The two things to add to that, and I do appreciate your sort of feedback on that, Guy, and your comment. I described it in my dual knit band review. I wonder if we have similar head shapes, Guy, or not, but I'll get a headache after 10 minutes, or not 10 minutes, 45 minutes of wearing a hat. Just a regular cheap hat that you spent $20 on to like commemorate a place. And it's like, I'll make I'll notch, I'll reach to the back of the hat and I'll move the notch over once. And now it's too loose on my head and it doesn't feel very snug. Then I'll go one notch over. And after 45 minutes, I want to take the hat off and throw it away because I have a headache. And it feels like you're describing a similar thing here. I could be wrong on that, but you're not describing face pressure. You're describing a headache. And those are two different things that like happen. VR headsets have invented new ways to talk about face discomfort. Yeah, Guy is saying I never wear caps or hats. So yeah, we are I'm guessing we have similar head shapes or reaction to weight, and that's why the dual knit band is goodness, like just a complete game changer for me.
Yeah, I think this is really, really important. I know we're talking about it over and over, but I think like if you have only used a ski goggle style headset, to use an easy way to describe it, and you're going to this and you're thinking, I just want to get away from Meta, or I just want to have a Quest Pro with 4K or a Quest 3 with 4K micro OLED. Keep in mind that there's a very real possibility you put this thing on and after 10 minutes you're like, ow. And that's something I think if you are, this is in the US. I think maybe if you're from South Korea and you're in our comments, let us know. But I think our current viewers are likely to be vast majority US, that in terms of people who are interested in purchasing the Galaxy XR. I really recommend going to a Galaxy Experience store, is what they call them. If there's one anywhere near you, or you're traveling to a city that has one, and put this thing in your head and try to be a little bit rude and stay in the demo for a little longer than you're supposed to. I'm sure they'll forgive you. Just keep that on your head and let me know what you think, because it's
Can you just refuse to take it off? What is that process? I suppose I would like to. I don't want to see video. I'm just curious, right? All right.
I'm sure they call security, right? But
I'm gonna have to get going here soon for my hard stuff. But I did want to talk about the Apple demo that we got this week. Apple did its first spatial briefing. And that means that David and I got onto a FaceTime call with 3 representatives of Apple, each of them wearing 3 headsets, and they walked us through basically a PowerPoint keynote presentation, as well as they pulled up a 3D model of a Vision Pro in between us and reached out and grabbed it with this gesture right here. And put it on, like they're holding it in midair between us, and David and I are both looking at this object together that is being held by a person in a third location. So David's in England, I'm in New York, Apple people are wherever Apple people are, and they're holding a digital object, and we're watching it in space move around at the same location. That's years ahead of what we did the same week, where David spent money, UploadVR's money, to fly from England to the United States to sit and watch another person wear the headset that he would prefer to wear for hours on end to really test the thing. There is a real, obvious, serious gap in where these platforms are in this in this demo. In 2021, if you go back into UploadVR's history, you can find a HoloLens 2 article that Jamie Feltham wrote, where Microsoft shipped a HoloLens 2 to me and a HoloLens 2 to Jamie, and then did a very similar call. There were reps from like Microsoft, and then there was Jamie and myself, him in England and me in the United States, and we are together doing this call with Microsoft personnel. And I got to take you back to the beginning of this podcast. We were talking about object permanence, and maybe we're not using the right terminology here. Jamie is over here as an avatar, right? Let's put it over here. Jamie is over here as an avatar. the Microsoft rep is over here as an avatar, and I'm hearing both of them speak. And there's an object, an Earth, 3D model that they've like put in between us. And I can only look at one of these objects at a time. I can only look at Jamie or the Microsoft representative or the model of the Earth. And I have to remember which side of the room Jamie is on in order to make eye contact with him. And I have to remember which side of the room the Microsoft representative is on. But in this demo, on a different model of display, like those headsets are dead. HoloLens is dead. Magic Leap is not dead yet, but is circling the drain, technologically speaking. We will have to see an announcement of whatever else thing they need to do. That type of display isn't working, but the software in it is almost identical to the software experience that David and I just experienced in roughly $10,000 of VR headset equipment on all of our heads. And during that demo, I'm looking at David over here. I'm looking at the Apple rep over here. And the 3D objects that we're discussing are right in the middle. My field of view contains all of these elements without even having to turn my head or turn my eyes. That's the difference of virtual reality being the foundation of personal computing here, as opposed to the thing a couple years back that failed. So I'm gonna pop out here, David. I'll leave you to end the broadcast and answer.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep talking about Galaxy XR as you come on. Yeah,
I'll see you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Okay. Coming back to Samsung Galaxy XR, our topic for today. There's another reason that this open periphery design is used. I've given it away in the sentence, and it is that it gives you an open periphery. That's why this forehead pad design is used. By default, you can see out the side and to below you. It's the same thing the Quest Pro did. To be clear, though, if you do want full immersion, you can attach these side blockers, which are there in the box. They are there in the box. They're not an optional purchase. They will give you a full closed periphery, just like you would get on the Quest Pro side blockers, or just like you would have in another headset. The difference is that it's not pushing into your sinuses or face, as I talked about before. These are very, very lightly touching the side of your cheeks and just providing the light blocking functionality. And you can see how these magnetically attach on here. I was able to attach them on, and ergonomically, they worked very well. So I think we need to talk a little bit more about things other than just the form factor. We have covered it a lot, but it is so important to note. So important to note. Let's talk about the displays themselves. They seemed actually slightly sharper than Vision Pros, which makes sense given on paper there are a little bit more pixels there. It is a higher resolution micro OLED ever so slightly. It looked vibrant and sharp. It gives you the magic of 4K micro OLED. When I was in Google Maps, for example, let's talk about Google Maps. So on Android XR, Google Maps is there, and the immersive mode is pretty much Google Earth VR from PC VR ported over. I don't know if it's literally the same software, but it looked and felt very, very, very similar. And fully standalone, it looks amazing on these 4K micro OLED displays. We were navigating around New York using just hand tracking and pinching and pulling like this. I was seeing this really high detail version of this city. The one trade-off I'll note, though, that comes back to what we said in the spec sheet design is the 72 hertz thing. By default, this is 72 hertz refresh rate. And so an interesting trade-off you need to note about that. If you have something bright in the edge of the lens, for many people, you'll actually see a flickering. You'll see noticeable flickering in your periphery. And I did notice that in certain scenes in Google Earth, Google Maps, I should say, as I went inside some of these buildings. But other than that, if you're using this for PC VR, for example, if you just want to get this, if you just want to buy this headset, put the side strappers on, boot up virtual desktop and go into PC VR, you can put it up to 90 hertz. The display supports it. If your PC can do 90 FPS, great. That's not a problem for you. In standalone mode, though, that's something you'll run into. It's an interesting question of like, how is Samsung and Google, how are Samsung and Google trying to deliver a Vision Pro-like experience with a chip that is much closer to Quest 3 than Vision Pro, right? And I'm even saying this is less powerful than the M2, and Apple just shipped the M5. So that's what I'm saying here. The trade-off they made was that they're reaching a lower target refresh rate by default. That's how they do it, as well as obviously some of the graphics of certain things being lower quality. It's a notable trade-off for the standalone experience. If you want to use this as a standalone headset, if you want to use it as a PC headset, you're not going to have to care. You just put it up to 90 and never think about it again. Let's talk a little bit about the fundamental tracking and pass-through. So pass-through on Galaxy XR, when you're reviewing the pass-through of any new headset, it's an incredibly difficult challenge to compare it to other headsets because it's so affected by the lighting conditions of the room, the time of day, where the lights are. If I was able to use my Vision Pro back-to-back in this exact seat at this exact spot, I would be able to give you an impression. I wasn't able to do that for obvious reasons, but I can tell you that my initial early impression is that this pass-through was the highest quality I have ever seen. It was as sharp as the Vision Pro pass-through. It's 6.5 megapixel cameras. That compares 6.5 megapixel for both Apple and Samsung. That compares to 4 megapixel for Quest. It also felt broadly depth correct and perspective correct. I was able to, walk around the room and actually try this by walking around. The only trade-off is that it has the same issue as Apple Vision Pro, where if you move your head side to side, there's a motion blur for the pass-through. And I'm not talking about virtual content. I'm talking about pass-through specifically. So that's interesting. But if you're moving your hand like this as a dynamic object, it doesn't have that blurring, which is really interesting because Quest 3 is the opposite. If you move your hand like this on Quest 3's pass-through, you'll notice that there's like almost like a judder, a low frame rate, lack of smoothness. But if you move your head on Quest 3, it's actually much more stable, the pass-through from like a motion blur perspective. That comes down to some underlying technical details that we don't have time to go into, but I think it kind of underscores that I don't think you're going to be disappointed with this pass-through experience. I'll put it that way. Okay, so on the performance thing that people were talking about, I'll get into that in a second. I'll first just quickly talk about hand tracking. You can see a funny video in the article that Ian talked about. He captured of me, standing up in the room and running my hands around like this to do all kinds of hand tracking. And I'm kind of doing a lot of the things I'm doing right now, and testing and interlocking hands and touching fingers to see if the hand mesh lines up. You can see that on Quest, it's not actually the hand tracking; it's the avatar right now that's not doing it. An interesting nuance. But this was the raw hand tracking in an experience. It just showed me the hand mesh. The stability and jitter were very great. There was no jitter. It was highly accurate, low latency. However, it was not as good at handling fast motions as Quest 3, nowhere near. In fact, if I were to do this kind of punching that is being picked up really, really well right now, people really sleep on how good Quest 3's hand tracking has gotten after years and years of meta software updates. It's actually remarkably good. Galaxy XR failed this test. You could see the hand, blinking in and out of existence as it kind of went through the motion. I'm trying to simulate it. I can't really show you what it would look like, but the hand you'd only see a couple of frames of hand tracking poses as I was doing these kind of punching movements. So currently, as it is in the box today, you couldn't do like a boxing game or something, I don't think, with this hand tracking. That's the one area it fell apart. Hands interlocking was a little bit worse than Quest 3. Quest 3 does handle this interlocking, overlapping hands thing a bit better. Quest 3 is not perfect at it, but it's better than Galaxy XR. The bigger issue, I do think, is fast movement. So that's an issue. Head tracking itself, flawless. For a big tech company like Google, Apple, and Meta, inside-out computer vision positional head tracking is a solved problem. It's just solved. It is. I've never been in my Vision Pro and thought this head tracking isn't good enough. We're in 2025. It's not a problem anymore. So yeah, let's get into the Android XR performance. Remarkably good. So I suspect that this is to do with software more than hardware. I think Google, being the company that makes Android, that has a strong engineering talent, that is able to come at this from a kind of fresh perspective, was able to do some things that are, better on an underlying software technical perspective than Meta. Meta has a lot of tech debt here, in a sense. Horizon OS, as it is today, evolved originally. If you go back, it's on its evolutionary path. It was originally a few subsystems of the Samsung Galaxy Note 4 phone that Meta made for the Gear VR Innovator Edition. And then in 2018, that was released in a standalone operating system. They had kind of taken that out of the Gear VR Samsung system software and pulled it into a new Oculus OS. There's all of these decisions that were made years and years ago about things about fundamental architecture are kind of still haunting them there. And there are other crazy things that I'm told about Horizon OS and how parts of it uses React for the UI and things like that. The point I'm trying to make here is opening different 2D apps, scrolling through the system. This was remarkably fast and smooth. There was no performance drops that I saw of any kind. It felt a lot closer to Vision Pro than it did to Quest 3. So that's really interesting. And it suggests how even by only having a little bit more performance from the chip, the right software, well-optimized software, can pull off a lot better. And I've long suspected that for Meta's system software, they were more constrained by poor software quality than by the hardware itself, and this is proof positive. In fact, I knew that already because I've tried Pico headsets, and Pico does it better than Meta. A Pico 4 is snappy and smooth in a way that a Quest 2 isn't. And a Pico 4 Ultra is a little bit snappier and smoother than Quest 3. So, that says a lot about the state of Meta's software in some ways, I think. But some of it is just that the chip is a little bit more powerful. The RAM matters too. I see someone in the comments pointing out, yes, the 16 gigabytes of RAM also matters, but the Pico 4 headset that I tried had only a little bit more than the Quest 3. It was 8 gigabytes versus 12 gigabytes. Also, I've tried the Quest Pro, which has 12 gigabytes of RAM, okay? And it had no better performance. The Quest Pro's performance was woeful, actually. It was atrocious. It was one of the worst standalone headsets from a performance perspective I've ever tried was Quest Pro. So, I think some of this is, some of it sure is going to be the RAM and the chip, but I think a lot of it is probably just good software. There's a meme, almost not a meme, but an idea in software in general that is very true these days, which is that the software of today often runs slower than the software of 20 years ago that ran on 10 orders of magnitude slower PCs. A lot of the way that software is built today is as if you were trying to build it with performance as an anti-goal, as if you were trying to make it as slow as possible. So that gets into wider stuff in the field of software engineering, and there are fierce debates that people with neckbeards will have for weeks. People would debate this for 10 hours straight, I'm sure, and there are people who will die on crosses for their opinions around this. But I tend to favor the view that there is a lot wrong with the way that modern software is built in certain systems, and that shows. VR is a perfect example of where on these mobile standalone systems, it's far, far worse to prefer the technique that trades off performance for anything else. That's what I'm trying to say here. It really, really matters here. But yeah, I was very, very impressed by the performance of Android XR in general. I didn't really have enough time to test, details. This was a 25-minute demo where I'm trying to do everything from adjust the comfort to go through the tutorial. The one thing that really, really surprised me about Android XR is that by default, it does not use the gaze and pinch interaction system of Apple Vision Pro. What do I mean by default? So by default, you just use what you use on Quest, right? You point your fingers and you see a kind of ray cast from it and you pinch. And your finger, your hand, your wrist is the pointer and the clicker. Or you connect the optional controllers and use them as you would your Quest, right? You understand how that works. On Apple Vision Pro, you point with your eyes and click with your fingers. So you literally just look at something and pinch. Doesn't matter where your hands are. They could be down at rest. Doesn't matter. Galaxy XR can do this. In this demo, I asked, why isn't this working? And they said, well, that's not the default. So I went into the settings. I think it was an advanced setting, if I recall correctly. Maybe not. No, it wasn't. But it was there, and I had to go into the input settings and then change it from hand tracking only to eyes plus hands. And then when I did that, it worked like Vision Pro. This is extremely perplexing to me. I do not understand why on earth that wouldn't be the default. I'm sure there's a good reason. I haven't figured it out yet. So if anyone knows why, and you're watching this, or if you have any insider information, feel free to DM me on X, email me, contact form, whatever you want, let me know. Because my time with Apple Vision Pro over the last 20 months or however long it's been tells me that this is the default interaction system for the future of XR. I'm never, for gaming, obviously it's different, but for generally using an operating system, I don't want to use anything else other than this gaze and pinch input system. It's amazing. Not having to hold your hands up, not having to kind of worry about the jitter of your kind of hand pointer. It is so fast for just, bringing up a movie or changing a setting. Just look at what you want. Look at the app and pinch. It as I said in my Vision Pro review, it feels like telekinesis. It feels like magic. It's so obvious. You're over time as well, it gets even more sort of natural. Your mind and body gets used to it. So your mind you gets used to it so much that it becomes second nature. You don't even realize you're doing it. You don't even realize that you're looking and pinching. It feels like psychic powers. That's the best analogy I can make. And so, yeah, it worked well in my demo. Maybe it's that they think it doesn't work well enough. This does have 2 eye tracking cameras per eye, just like Vision Pro. Quest Pro had 1 per eye, so maybe it wasn't good enough. But they have 2 eye tracking cameras per eye. Google's a first-class technology company that can do good computer vision. I don't understand why on earth this wouldn't be the case. So yeah, that's really, really puzzling and perplexing. But it works. In my demo, it worked flawlessly. I looked at stuff and pinched at stuff after I turned it on the settings, and it worked. The other thing is, you don't have. I'm saying someone's saying Bradley said something about hand tracking being in system level. I guess it means it's more accurate than Quest 3. I don't know what that means. I just described the hand tracking is inferior to Quest 3. I don't know what Bradley's trying to say by that or what you're trying to say by that. But yeah, maybe you're talking about something I'm not aware of the context of. Yeah. So the other thing that was a little bit surprising about Android XR is that it doesn't have the system-wide hand and arm occlusion via image segmentation. That, again, is an optional feature. It's actually an experimental feature, but it's not image segmentation. It is Quest-style hand segmentation using the hand tracking mesh. I say Quest-style. Meta doesn't use it in the home system, but any developer can enable it relatively easily. Let's not say easily, but it's possible to do. It's a feature of their Unity SDK. You can have hand segmentation, go into Star Wars, what's the mixed reality game called? Beyond Victory. It's there. There are a bunch of different mixed reality apps that use it now these days. It's something that exists in Quest. Android XR does have it as a home space feature that you can enable, but it's not a system level feature. It's not like Apple Vision Pro where it's literally just like fundamentally a part of the OS and how it works. And yeah, it's not enabled by default. So by default, you'll just see like a hand tracking outline like you see on Quest. Yeah, so D1360VR saying the occlusion is better. Sorry, it was a little bit better, the hand occlusion, than Quest, but I wouldn't say it was amazing, and it wasn't as good as Apple Vision Pro. There was still like lines around your hand because, again, it's using the hand tracking mesh. It's not doing a per pixel test like Apple Vision Pro. It's doing a mesh of your hand. Like it's a computer vision tracking system getting a 3D model of your hand and then trying to convert a 3D model into like a screen space 2D cutout. It doesn't work super well, to be honest with you. It was not like that. Yeah. So a couple of questions here I'm going to go through. I guess this is just, at this point, yeah, it's question time. So Gemini, someone's asking how granular is it for repositioning windows? From what I could tell, it's just a cleanup function. Gemini calls the system level feature. There's like a button in the menu, a virtual button that brings your rearranges your monitors for you. It's not something that I don't think Gemini has like precise positioning. Gemini gets so Gemini's interesting on this headset, and they talked about it so much during the presentation that if you'd played a version of the VR download drinking game where you take a shot every time they say AI or Gemini, you would be horribly, horribly drunk. You would die of alcohol poisoning. In fact, they said it more than any other word by far. But it's not like Meta AI on your Quest. It is much, much, much more advanced. So you start a Gemini live session quite easily with a one button press, and you don't have to keep saying Gemini or Google. It's a live session, and so as an optional part of that, you can give it a constant view of what you see, both virtual and real, and then have it as if you're on a video call where you're sharing your view, and Gemini's always there. And so you can just have a continuous conversation with it. It can interact with a lot of the system features. There are a lot of things it can do. You saw a lot of this in the demo. I didn't really get to try this for long enough to have any idea of the limits here, but it's quite clear that Gemini is at the core of Android XR. If you enjoy sitting and talking to your computer, that's great for you. If you don't, you're not going to really care about that. I think a lot of the example use cases they gave were very difficult to believe a regular user using. But at the same time, I can imagine it being occasionally useful for certain things. Huffy asked, did they show two types of avatars in the video call? Yes, they did. So this is a really weird thing. There are two different avatar systems on this. Not that weird because Meta will probably do the same. There are Samsung avatars, and they look kind of like this. They look pretty much like what I'm using now. It's the same kind of thing, a Samsung avatar. And then they have Google likeness. And Google likeness is similar to Apple Vision Pro's personas, but actually more like what personas were at launch. They are inside a window right now. As far as I'm aware, they're only used in Google Meet, Google's FaceTime equivalent. And so if you're on a headset and you're joining, I think they're usable by any app. Sorry to be clear, as a webcam view, but the primary use case is Google Meet. So any app that requests the webcam, you choose in the settings. There's an avatar setting in Android XR, and you choose right now likeness, Google likeness, or Samsung avatar. And so you get to choose between, and then whatever app requests your webcam will get a virtual webcam view. Meta has a virtual webcam view on Horizon OS, but it hasn't done this yet for personas, probably, for codec avatars, as Meta would call it, probably because Quest 3 doesn't have eye and face tracking. This has, again, eye tracking and face tracking. It's not just eye tracking; it is face tracking as well. So they can do this this thing. So let me show you how the face tracking works. There's a camera here, and there's a camera on the other side in the same position. Very similar to Quest Pro's approach and Apple Vision Pro's as well. And then the internal eye tracking cameras are used for your upper face. So you move your lips. This camera is able to see the movement of your lips. That's how it works. Yeah, so you can use either. Let's see if there are any other questions here. Can I scan my dog to be a persona? No. And interestingly, you scan your likeness, your Google likeness, using your phone, not the front of the headset. There's no front display here. Like, fundamentally, there's a question, why is this half the price of Vision Pro? Well, one of them is that this is using, a souped up smartphone chip, which is a little bit more powerful than Quest 3. That's reason one. Apple Vision Pro is using a, high-end tablet/laptop chip, right? M5. The other reason is that there's no front display here. This does not have a lenticular front display. There's no eyesight or anything like that. This is just a shiny, glossy visor. And then obviously the other reasons are down to things like the Apple tax. Apple has a very high hardware margin. The materials used in Vision Pro, for example, the battery on Vision Pro is this really nice aluminium that feels actually really nice in your hand. It sounds so bourgeois almost to say, but it feels so much nicer than the little plastic battery that Samsung has here, right? Samsung's is the same shape-ish, kind of. It's flat on the top, but Apple's, it actually is satisfying to hold. Does that matter? Does it matter that the battery is nice to hold? No, but there are all of these nice little quality of life differences that are very minor. Now, obviously, the Galaxy XR, it looks nice. I think it's a well-made headset. It has a kind of nice feeling of being premium, but we talked about earlier, Apple is putting tungsten into the head strap, for example. These are all these little things do add up. Also, Apple has a secondary chip on board, the R1 chip. There's 2 chips on the Vision Pro. All these kind of little things. Do the Windows cast shadows like Vision OS does? Is a question I see here. The answer to that one is yes. Yes, they do. They cast shadows both in an environment and pass through. I guess I should just bring up some screenshots of Android XR apps now as we're talking about that. Yeah, these will cast windows and you can move them around. Does it work in Europe with a VPN? Yes, but they won't support it in Europe. If you import it in Europe and it breaks, you're screwed. You will have a $2,000 headset that Samsung will say, sorry, not supported. Figure it out yourself. How was the lens quality compared to Quest 3 and Apple Vision Pro? Yeah, so because of this issue of lens depth, I wasn't really able to assess that very well because I was obviously getting, again, at home, folks, take your Quest headset or whatever headset you have and move it a few centimeters away from your face intentionally. You'll see exactly what I mean. Would you call that a real assessment of the headset? No. Someone is saying that they like the VO3 implementation to convert photos into spatial videos. Yeah, that's just in the web browser, actually. That's not actually unique to Android XR. They just opened a web browser and went to VO website. Is there any support for old Daydream apps? No, this is completely new. There's no Daydream support. Something we haven't even mentioned here, right? Google had a previous platform back in the days of Oculus Go. They had Daydream. They built, I wonder if we have a screenshot of this here. They literally had an Android XR, right? Like an XR version of Android. And it was called Daydream. And maybe a lot of people in this a lot of viewers here are saying, sure, I know all about that. A lot don't. So this is on screen right now, the Lenovo Mirage Solo, which was the only standalone headset to ever release with Daydream. Other than that, they did have the little Gear VR-like thing to put your Pixel phone in. So yeah, this was 2018, and I think they killed it within less than 2 years. So yeah, here's the kind of the 2 Daydream solutions here. I have some screenshots in our old archives showing you. Here's I remember the real Android XR. Show me the real Android XR. Here it is. Here's Daydream. Here is the Android XR 7 years ago, right? This is Google's Android XR platform. And the history here basically is no one bought the Lenovo Mirage Solo. And for a bunch of reasons, headsets like this in Gear VR that you put your phone into suck and nobody wants them. A couple of reasons. They overheat. Your phone doesn't have a cooling fan, so it can't handle it. Every standalone headset has a cooling fan. It's essential. That's reason one. No one likes draining their phone battery. It's heavy. There's all kinds of reasons. In theory, it's so great. You can imagine the preppy executive in the room going, oh, but everyone already has a phone, man. It's going to be so great. This makes so obvious. Everyone loves their phone. Just make the VR part of their phone. And Gear VR tried it and Daydream tried it and it sucked. And look, okay, maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but it clearly failed. And so in the combination of this, right, these two headsets failing, the phone approach and the Lenovo Mirage Solo, which was like a weird cross between, it was like a middle ground between a Quest and a Go, right? It was Oculus Go, but with 6DoF tracking. That's pretty much what this was on a hardware level. It had 2 cameras. It could do positional tracking, but it didn't have track controllers. It had a little Go-like remote. So it was like the worst of both worlds because it was twice the price. So yes, this feels, the history here is Google gives up, just decides, oh, I guess our two, I don't want to be too harsh here, not great options failed. Therefore, the whole idea is terrible and nothing could possibly work here. And so they shut down Daydream. And a couple of months later, on the grand scheme of things, Meta releases Quest 2. and it becomes, a massive hit. Quest 2 sells tens of millions of units. But Meta goes on to scale up the Quest ecosystem. It spends the next 5-6 years building out things. And so at some point, the success of the Quest 2 and the rumors that were swirling that Apple was going to enter the market meant that Google said, oh, do we have something like that? And, in some boardroom, and someone went, yeah, we did, but we scrapped it. And then they said, oh, okay, let's get that started up again. And they kind of go from scratch. So, yep. I love that a commenter brought that up, because it's almost like it's been memory hold. It's almost like you'll never hear Google mention it in any of these presentations, by the way. You'll never hear any of them utter the word daydream. It was almost just a dream. You could almost forget that it happened, but it did. Google had an Android XR platform. This is Android XR 2.0 in a sense. This is Google's try number 2. And that's one of the big concerns here that some developers have. So porting from Quest to Android XR, easy peasy. They're both OpenXR compliant Android-based headsets. I have spoken to developers who tell me that it took them a couple of hours to port from Quest to Android XR. Not days, not weeks, not months, but hours. So that's why, even though this is a $2,000 headset, you actually see a bunch of different developers port over, right? Because when a developer decides when to target a new platform, there's 2 issues that matter. A, how many people are on it? And B, how easy is it to port? So Android XR is so easy to port to that a lot of developers are saying, why the hell not? Let's put it on there. Let's see if it takes off. What do we have to lose? And that's kind of the situation that we're seeing right now. For many apps, depending on what APIs they use, if they're using, pure OpenXR, you can actually literally run the same APK on Galaxy XR and Quest 3. Now, there's complexities involved when you talk about, like, how does it talk to, certain Meta or Google specific APIs for cloud storage or leaderboards or, little platform level things like that. But other than these minor little things, they are pretty much, it's the same stuff, right? It's the same OpenXR. That's not the case for Apple Vision Pro. Apple Vision Pro has Vision OS that it doesn't support OpenXR. It's so different than Android. If you're using Unity, it can be a little easier, right? Unity handles all the low-level stuff, but there's still some fundamental differences. But yeah, Jorg is bringing up a really great comment in that it is very easy to port, yes, but the controllers are optional, so developers can't rely on users having a controller. And that's why the controller selling out is such a big deal. So a lot of these games use hand tracking, right? Actually, almost everything here supports it, but Arizona Sunshine doesn't, and Walkabout Mini Golf doesn't. So there's a possibility here where somebody buys a Galaxy XR and their controllers are shipping 4 weeks later because Samsung didn't realize that people wanted controllers in the box. And then they can't play Walkabout Mini Golf or Arizona Sunshine or SteamVR content for 4 weeks. And, maybe that doesn't matter in the long term, but I think it's interesting. And it's actually fascinating that, like, we asked the Samsung guy who was there at this event, like, why are these not in the box? And his answer was pretty much along the lines of, we didn't want to confuse people. We wanted to make it clear that you can use this with your hands. You don't need the controllers. We didn't want people to have to think that they needed the controllers. And so, like, I see a lot of speculation from people being like, oh, it's because they're so expensive. You don't want to add any cost. Folks, I'm going to let you know a little secret. These things cost these companies $15 each to make. They are a gamepad split in half with some blinking LEDs. There's nothing exotic in these controllers. They're not electromagnetic. They're not, using some sort of like exotic rare component. It's a gamepad split in half with some blinking IR LEDs. Like, the reason that you can understand why, if you're talking about something on the price level of a Quest 3S, you can imagine saving a decent amount of money, right? Because that's $30 for a pair, and that starts to matter when a headset is a couple $100. Sure, you could sell a Quest 3S for $50 cheaper, right? For example, or depending on how you want to do things like that. But fundamentally, if you have a $2,000 headset or $1,800 to be clear here, this would have cost Samsung $30 extra to put them in the box. This was not we heard it right to our faces. This was a decision made. I'm sure the finance had something to do with it. Yes, all of the components add up. But this was not a decision that was made primarily because of that. It was about product proposition and making sure it's clear that, you don't need track controllers. It's magic. You can just talk to Gemini with your hands. That's the reason here that this is being done, right? Yeah. So I'm seeing Guy Godin point out that there are some differences on Android XR. I should say the differences on the Google Play Store than the Horizon Store. You have different entitlement checks and user verification and things like that. Of course, yes. But again, I've spoken to... So yeah, Guy Godin in particular actually is developing a native app. So he's using the native OpenXR APIs and things like that. And yes, that's a little bit more complicated. To be clear, the developers I've spoken to are Unity developers. Guy Godin points out, yes, these things are abstracted in Unity Unreal. I've spoken to Unity developers who have ported their apps from Quest to Android XR in a matter of hours. Yeah. Obviously, there's other issues, like you have to do your paperwork for the Google Play Store. A lot of companies will have someone to do that for them, right? Like I'm talking about the coding and technical development. You got to fill out the Google Play Store paperwork, just like you got to fill out Horizon Store paperwork. Those things are obviously, I'm not saying you just press a button, but at the same time, if you're got a game in Unity, it runs on Quest. It'll run on Android XR in many cases. I see D1360 saying that they hope Disney Plus adds their Apple Vision Pro spatial content to Android XR. Yeah, Meta has said that Disney Plus is coming to Horizon OS next year. They have not disclosed whether that will include things like 3D movies and stuff like that. Disney does seem to have a partnership with Apple of some sort that's going on here. Yeah, so folks, I think we're really almost near the end of this discussion. I guess what I want to point out is that we have not been sent a review unit by Samsung. I don't want to, get into sounding entitled or whining or anything, but I think that is an interesting decision. Apple did send us an M5 Vision Pro review unit. Samsung, for example, has excluded some other people in the industry that we want to know. Tested, Norm from Tested was not even invited to this event. Never mind given a headset. I think that's a huge mistake. I think Norm from Tested does some of the best reviews in this industry and should absolutely have had a headset. Again, you can debate where's the line between entitlement and pointing out I think UploadVR and Tested should get a review unit of Samsung Galaxy XR. That's my opinion. And if that sounds entitled, I don't care. And I think Norm should absolutely have one. Come on. Like, even if I would actually say it's a stronger argument on a global level, stepping outside from my personal, feelings, that Norm should have one even before we should have one, like absolutely Norm should have one. And yeah, a little scampy, they invited us to the event and did not give us a review headset. Yeah. And, frustratingly, and I'm not going to name names, but there's there's someone else in the industry, another journalist, another outlet that has had the same frustration. Samsung didn't even tell us that they weren't giving us a review unit until the last second, after the first batch of controllers had already sold out. Okay. So we asked, obviously, or, any idea on review units, please let us know, because if we're not getting one, we'd love to order one so we have one on day one. Okay. Samsung says, we'll get back to you. And then we find out on launch day that a bunch of people had been sent review units, not us. And they say, oh, well, we recommend you go buy your own. I would have actually respected them just saying, hey, we can't give you one. There's not a limited supply. We're sorry. Go buy your own. Sure, great, fine. We'll go buy our own. But we were in this kind of, and not just us, there's other outlets that are in this point of, we'll tell you when we know about review units and we don't. But look, I'm not going to complain about this. I understand the way the world works. It is what it is. We've ordered our own Galaxy XR. We will be giving you a review once we get it, right? There's complexities about getting it over the Atlantic, but we will get you a review as soon as we can, and we'll tell you all about it. And if you have any questions for that review, let us know in the comments of the article that is pinned in the chat here, or just in the YouTube comments if you don't want to go to the article. And yeah, we can do that. So, are there any other questions here about Android XR or Galaxy XR just before we head off here? Do you think Google will bring YouTube to Vision Pro, or will they try to Windows Phone things? Fascinating question. So, interestingly, there is a YouTube app on Quest, right? And Google put it there years ago. There's also Job Simulator. If you don't know, Google owns Alchemy Labs, the maker of Job Simulator and Vacation Simulator. Those are on Quest. But the question is, are those there just because that was years before Google even knew it was going to do Android XR? Maybe. Or are those there because it wants to be other places? Today, you can get all your Google apps on an iPhone, right? You could be in the Google ecosystem, but an iPhone user. You can get Chrome, Docs, Photos, YouTube, all of the Google Maps, right? You can do your Google services on your iPhone. But would Google do that again, knowing that it was going to use iPhone or going to have Android? There's a lot of questions here. It comes down to, do we think Google is worried about anti-competition regulators and things like that? Is VR big enough for the regulators to even look at this yet? That'll be a really, really, really interesting thing to see. Yeah. I see Georg the Elder asking, why did they not reuse the Odyssey controllers? They seem to have been well liked and looked better. Probably because the people that made the Odyssey have long since moved on from Samsung. The people who made this probably don't even know them. The production lines and designs are, this was last decade. At the end of the day, it was almost a decade ago. And so I think they probably just, yeah. I think the other answer, to be honest with you, is that these controllers are it's either the Qualcomm or the Gore-Tex reference design. So it's either Qualcomm, the people who make the chips, or Gore-Tex, the people who make the reference designs. Because you can notice that these controllers are pretty similar on what you see on like Play for Dream, for example. This is the minimum viable effort controller you put on your headset if you don't want to design your own, right? I got to hold the controller for like a second, but I didn't get to use it. I would say that like it didn't feel, you can even see here, and from my experience from a decade of holding VR controllers, I can tell you that this is not as good as the Quest Touch controllers. The Touch Plus controllers are my favorite controllers personally. I really, really like them. They have their shaping is just right for my hand, at least. They feel solid and yet incredibly light. I really think the Quest 3 controllers are underrated in terms of how good they are. So, yeah. And yeah, those things are thumb rests. Okay. Julian is asking, can you let us know if Mac Virtual Display runs at 120 Hertz for next week? I think Ian may be able to test that for you, or as Ian mentioned, our plan is to hand over the M5 Vision Pro to me at some point. Again, complexities about the Atlantic, but I also, in November, you should expect a review of both M5 Vision Pro, and I'll review Vision OS at the same time and tell you, what's the state of Apple's offering today. And then I'll obviously also review Galaxy XR. Let's end with a question from Barzim, who says, who do you think the headset is aimed at? Who is Galaxy XR aimed at? It's a good question. Essentially, the proposition is that it's a Android Apple Vision Pro. And as I said in my Apple Vision Pro review, it turns screens into software. But the inability to lean back on a chair or sofa in this means that I wonder how many situations where you want to turn a screen into software are actually practical with this form factor. And that makes me kind of wonder who it is for. I think that was very unclear in Google's presentation, right? I think there was this real issue of like, you're showing a lot of technology, but what do you think is the user of this, right? Like Apple Vision Pro, it's the person who wants to get on a 10-hour plane flight and have their giant 4K HDR cinema screen, or in the hotel room, or in bed, or have their Mac turned into a giant Mac virtual display. That's the use case, right? There's obviously other use cases, but that's kind of like the core proposition of the product. As I see it, there's obviously, again, other use cases, 3D movies, and there are certain full mixed reality and VR apps, but that's the proposition fundamentally, right? Quest 3, it's a immersive gaming console, right? It's be inside the virtual worlds, directly interact with the objects, be inside the game. It's also, interact on social platforms like VR Chat and Horizon Worlds. It's a fitness device. You stand up and you play FitXR, and FitXR is going to be there on this, right? But do you need a $1,800 headset with a tethered battery pack for that? Maybe not. I guess the other use cases of Quest are less important. It's not really what people use it for. It's those kind of three use cases. It's gaming, social, and fitness today. So that does leave you in a puzzling question of like, what exactly is this for? Theoretically, you can just strap on those side blockers and just use it as a fancy, super high-end VR gaming headset, right? Like, you can play the selection of Android games that are there, and you can put it to your gaming PC if you have one wirelessly. You go to the virtual desktop, stick it up to monster mode, and enjoy high fidelity wireless VR. And maybe that is a proposition here, right? Like we talked earlier about how the Shiftall headset and the Pimax Dream as well, by the way, we didn't talk about it, but Pimax Dream, they are using 4K micro OLEDs, and they're just tethered PC headsets for the same price as this. This is giving you a full wireless system and standalone headset, et cetera, for that same price. So it's a high-end PC VR headset is a good example of who this is for, right? If you want a wireless 4K OLED PC VR headset, here you go. If your head is suitable for this form factor, and if you're in VR chat, by the way, with virtual desktop, you can forward through your face and eye tracking, so you drive your VR chat avatar. But that's a relatively niche market, right? Like a $2,000 PC based wireless VR headset. It's a relatively niche market. So I think it's going to be interesting to see here what, if we ask Google 6 months from now or 12 months from now, what do people mainly use this for? I think it'll be super curious to see what their answers right now are. Okay, I think we have covered this today. I see Nick Tater saying, I really hope I can get my eyes close enough to the lenses. I hope you can too. I really hope so if you've purchased this headset. Again, there are different cushion size adjusters. We need to play with this. Like, was I using this one, right? And maybe I need to use this one. Let's find out. I don't think any of these pictures really make it clear. This image, to be clear, is I don't think this is of this headset. This is of a different headset, and you can't even see either here, right? You can see here that the build quality materials are great in that sense. Like, there's no complaint about that. Yeah. I saw someone say this is basically a Quest Pro 2. And yes, my understanding is that the chip that was in this headset, the XR2 Plus Gen 2, was actually originally pitched to Meta for a Quest Pro 2. And there was a plan at one point to release a Quest Pro 2 last year alongside Quest 3S. But Meta decided to cancel that. They said, no, we're not really looking to do another field headset. Meta's been very spooked by Quest Pro. Quest Pro really made them reevaluate what it means to have a high-end headset. And I don't think they ever want to go above $1,000 anytime soon ever again, to be honest with you. But I think, this is essentially like the ghost of Quest Pro, right? This is like, in so many ways, the idea of Quest Pro, but done right. Like, Quest Pro had an anemic chipset, laughably bad pass-through, 2K, sub 2K LCDs. This hardware wise, it's got everything Quest Pro didn't, right? It's got great pass through. It's got a chipset that is more powerful than Quest 3 and good software to run it. It's got 4K micro OLED displays. It is everything Quest Pro should have been, or at least Quest Pro 2 should have been. But obviously it's running, Google's Android XR. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm overstating the issue of the backstrap here. Maybe you don't like to rest your head against anything when you're in VR anyway. Maybe you just want to sit on a chair and have your virtual monitor set up. Well, this could be for you, right? This could be how you sit and have your, triple monitor set up while you're in, a Android XR background environment, or you're using maybe virtual desktop for that. Maybe that is what you're going to use this for. Maybe that's, you find that the ergonomics here are great. It'll be interesting to see whether platforms like VR Chat come to Android XR natively. You can see Henry Stockdale's article on UploadVR.com listing all of the Android XR launch apps, including some of these big titles. Maybe it's a gaming headset for people standalone using hand tracking. That's a more and more popular thing we're seeing with Vision Pro. Maybe you do want to just, play your real VR fishing in your Cubism, walkabout mini golf. All of these things are possible. I'm ranting here and rambling a little bit because I'm thinking through this in real time, but yeah, it's going to be super duper interesting to see how this pans out. It's too early to know. It's just launched this week. Yeah, I see a few people here saying that they really like their Quest Pro, but they just want an upgrade. I think that if you're someone who really likes the form factor of Quest Pro, but you just wish it wasn't shit, then here you go. Here's the headset for you right here. It's the ghost of Quest Pro, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a very neutral way. It is Quest Pro, but done right from a hardware perspective. That was almost going to be my headline for my hands-on, like Quest Pro, but done right. But I don't want to say too much about the kind of. You don't want to always relate an existing a new product back to an old discontinued existing one, but it is in many ways Quest Pro done right, except the big difference is the external battery, right? Quest Pro, this is another really fascinating thing, just a last rant here. Like, a Galaxy XR has a hard rear strap, but no battery in it. There's no battery in here. Quest Pro put its battery in there. And so that's really interesting to me. Like, I wonder, is there a world where you could have had the battery in the rear like Quest Pro? I don't know. Maybe I feel like if you're putting something at the back of your head like that, why not at that point, right? Like, let me see if I can get some other kind of images here of Galaxy XR. Yeah, you can see like just how much of a kind of footprint there is at the back here. I feel like you could have put a battery in here and got rid of the external battery. I would have been, when we first saw it, that was in my original assumption, right? The first time I ever saw the design of Galaxy XR, I thought, because of course they didn't show the damn external battery, like our earlier discussion where nobody ever shows it because they are embarrassed, I guess, to have it. The first thing I assumed was, of course, the battery's back there, but it isn't. So yeah, I don't know. I'd love to see a headset that does this, but does put the battery in here. So like it's pretty much everything the Galaxy XR is, except it is fully standalone. I said it again. I said it many times in this show. I'll say it again. I really love the ability to just put the damn headset on my head and not have to think about anything else. Let me just bring up, I'm trying to find an image of Quest Pro or in our system here. The only one I have here is quite dark, but you can see here that there is a kind of greater footprint to the back of the headset. But if you have anything there at all other than a soft strap, I feel like at that point, like if you have anything there at all, it doesn't change much to put even more there, right? Like, it already is going to block any kind of leaning back into anything use case. What's the issue with just putting a little bit of battery in there as well? Really trying to find a better image here, folks, just to kind of discuss this. Yeah, here we go. Here's like one with John Carmack and Quest Pro for some reason. And you can see like the padding here is different, right? Like the front, fundamentally same concept here. The rear padding is obviously different. They have like more footprint back here, but
I don't think it's so much that you would be like, wow, this is so different than Galaxy XR. Yeah, so I think we're going to close up this show now. I'm just going to try and see if I can find one clear image of the Quest Pro battery just to make this point very visually clear. I'm having a few little issues with our image search system here. So if you just stand by, we should be able to find it. If you are a listener to this podcast right now that doesn't have the images on screen, I'm sorry. You can just skip to the end. We're going to just end the show. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, this is the best image I have for you right now. The image system is failing me here. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us in this conversation today. We have gone through so much. We had some great discussion here with Ian and myself and you as the commenters, and there's so many things happening. This is one of the most news topics we've had on VR Download ever. It is crazy that if you were to tell someone 3 or 4 years ago that there would be a week where both Apple and Samsung would be launching high-end headsets, someone would tell you like, no, it can't be. There was an era where everything in this market was Quest 2. I remember there was an era where literally there was no other headset that anyone was buying. There was no other headset that anyone was reading news about. We have the analytics for this. Everything was just all about Quest 2. And there was really just the Quest 2 time in this industry. And how different things are now that we are in this world where there is, Apple and Samsung and Meta. And on the smaller side, you have like Shiftall and Pimax, and there are lots of rumors about the idea of Valve jumping in again, and we'll have to see how that pans out. This is a really interesting time to be in the industry, as well as, of course, smart glasses as well coming along adjacent to all of this. And I think Ian's conversation at the start about where does that fit into this equation is very interesting. There's I guess no right answer there. The catch-all term XR is so overloaded with a kind of lack of specificity there. But there obviously are kind of fundamental relationships between these things. Yeah. So yes, thanks so much, everyone. Oh, I finally found the damn image I was looking for the whole time. I knew it was there somewhere. Yeah, this one kind of shows you that there is a much greater footprint at the back when you put the battery there. But again, to what extent would that really fundamentally change the ergonomic situation here? I don't know. Thanks so much, everyone. Really appreciate you joining us today for VR Download. We'll let you know about our timing for next week when we know. It's a very, very busy time. We've got a lot going on. We will see you in the future.